It means I can sync them all up. Yeah.
Don't give me shit.
All right, cool. So we're here again. This is Richard Wooten Podcast, episode 3. And I don't even know if we've actually said your name.
Damn. You may have said it at some point just in passing, but no. I am a Robert Rabel.
And, you know, so I realized this week as I was sort of thinking back on this stuff, and it's like we really are just having the conversations that we normally have.
Yep.
We're just kind of putting mics and headphones and cameras in front of it, so we're
only sort of giving the vaguest notion of attention to like what's going on here.
Yeah, so I have there's going to be some issues in the last one that I don't know how I'm going to fix because we're like talking about albums, but we're like I'm like holding up a CD and we're like, oh yeah, that motherfucker.
Right. And, oh, of course he picked that one. Of course he picked that one. Like
like we're not even. It's not even.
Didn't say anything. We sort of rectified that a little ways through, but we didn't go back and
like towards the end, the way end of it.
A little ways from the end is what I meant to say.
Yeah. So yeah, like we're gonna get better at this as we go, as we sort of understand the medium.
Become podcasters, professional.
I guess so. You know.
Well,
I thought all I had to do was get this arm, this fancy boom arm. I thought that was all I needed to do. I thought it had like an auto stop, like it would let me know in some way, like it would sort of automatically cut out, you know, or like it would remind me. Like I thought this was like the producer pack. Like I thought it came with a producer.
Yeah, I thought with these fancy microphones, it would also add like the chyrons and shit to the video and tell you like who we are and what we're talking about.
Yeah,
the chyron is the little thing at the bottom.
Is that what that is?
That's what that's called.
I didn't know. Thank you for like that shows how long we've known each other because you're like, oh, I could tell for that eyebrow twitch. Richard doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about.
It's handy.
So anyway, that's sort of the dig.
So in that same vein, I don't know last time or the time before if we actually said what the thing was that we were talking about explicitly.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. I think I'm gonna go back and slap intros on those. So this episode, so we did our very first episode was this a thing we were calling like a musicology. You know, or a proto musicology where we're making these playlists, making the other person listen to them, and we're sort of trying to create an environment, like what the musical environment was for us during a certain period of time. And the first one was basically what I was calling pre-agency. So music you were just exposed to by your parents. So leading up to around sort of before 6th grade, because for me, it was around 6th grade when I started to choose.
Yeah.
And I want to listen to this. And I got my own CD player now.
Ooh.
Or my own, you know, you started to have more agency.
Fancy 6th grader.
Yeah, I was.
Discman.
Yeah.
Mine wasn't until like after 7th grade.
Oh, man.
So that colors a bit of my list today, for example.
Right. So,
but yeah, so the first episode was like pre sort of agency, which was the music that was around and just playing that we didn't necessarily choose to be playing.
Right, and it was mostly our parents' music,
Yeah.
Or maybe something that a neighbor kid exposed us to. But it was all, I really enjoyed going through that much more than I thought I would, because it was so personal, you know.
Yeah. A lot of nostalgia there.
Yeah, and a lot of sort of rediscovering things and listening to things that you hadn't listened to in 20 years and being like, and just sort of being like, how fucking good is Alabama? Jesus. And
you do need a fiddle if you're gonna play the band. Damn. So
what we decided to do on this one is sort of just carry that forward. So this is sort of, for me, this was covering the period from more or less like 6th grade up till I guess like the summer before 8th grade. So it's sort of like a 2-year period whenever I started to sort of like 94 to 96. That's really the years that this covers for me.
Yep.
So
when you let me know that, my initial reaction was like, because I think your reasoning was primarily because that was when shit changed to a certain degree, and you sort of started seeing yourself as a musician a bit more.
That happens. That happened sort of in between 8th grade and high school.
Okay.
And so after that was the first sort of target point I was going for, but that would have been like 3.5 hours. And I was like, I don't, let's keep this down to like 2, keep these playlists down to 2.
Yeah.
So I decided to cut it off. So for me, there's sort of, maybe I'll just do that. I'll give you the end caps for this era for me. So the initial era, or the beginning of it is hearing Aerosmith's Eat the Rich. So I was over at a friend's house, and there was a neighbor there. She was a girl. She was older than us, and she had the Get a Grip cassette.
Ooh.
And she put that on for whatever reason, and I heard the drums, I heard Eat the Rich, and that like changed my life. So, nice. And then later I was over at another family friend's house, and they had like a little kid drum set there, and so I walked up to it and I like hit all the things, figured out what all the sounds were, and then
started playing Eat the Rich.
I did.
Damn.
I did. I figured out the intro. I was like, okay, that's this one, and this one, doom doom, down down. And then gone. I was like that. Ding, boom, boom, boom. Oh, that's this one. That's this one. You know what I mean? And so I then like showed my mom, and she was like, "Well, shit." I guess we gotta figure out.
Can see where this is going.
Yeah. So that's sort of that was sort of a big starting point, and then the ending. We'll say the ending point. We'll give you the two bookends here. The other bookend will be seeing my first concert, which was Pantera and White Zombie. Seeing that as like a 12-year-old.
Oh, what a good show!
And so
wow.
that galvanized me. Because after that, seeing that show, it was like, okay, well, the decision has been made for me. I have to do that. Drums aren't just a thing I like anymore. Like, I have to do that. And so the playlist I sent you is sort of a journey from that A to B of those,
Okay. So it wasn't when you started seeing yourself as a musician, it was when the sort of seed was planted at that point.
Which?
To become a drummer. That was what you realized you needed to do.
Are you talking about the Pantera show or hearing Aerosmith?
Yeah. He's like, you need to do that.
Yeah, because I mean, I already had a band, me and Jeremy and friends, we'd already started a band, and all those types of things. But whenever I saw...
Or was it more like you need to do what Vinnie Paul is doing?
It was, I have to do this for real. Like,
okay.
I have to be on stage playing drums in front of people. I have to, it was just very simple after that. It was like, okay, well, I'm a drummer.
Gotcha.
And it was just very, seeing Vinnie Paul play drums in person when I'm 12, it was very clear. It was made very apparent for me. I didn't have the choice was made for me, was sort of how it felt. And so I started practicing a lot more. Everything got much more serious. It wasn't just, that was whenever video games started to fade away, and drums kind of became
right
what the thing that I cared the most about. And so this playlist is sort of me going from that sort of initial impulse of like, man, I like drums, and then sort of me navigating through just the music of the day and going through these little tangents, sort of, and things like that. So
yeah, so mine, I guess, is similar in a way. So yeah, when you told me this, when you told me that that was sort of your initial cutoff point, my initial reaction was, well, that's I'm probably going to do more like 4 or 5 years as opposed to like 2 or 3 years, because that seems more reasonable for me, because I didn't really hit an inflection point of any sort until later on. Nothing really changed for me as far as as drastically as it did for you.
I see.
Seemingly. But as I sat down and actually started making this list, I realized that was completely infeasible. There was way too much music that had to go on this list.
Right.
Even just for this time period. This was rough cuts here. This was fucking hard to cut.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff off and keep it to roughly 20 songs, about 2 hours.
Right.
And I realized that seventh. So I didn't really pick the right before 7th grade cutoff. Yeah, that was what yours was, right? Or 8th grade.
Yeah. It was around, so
mid-96, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So I didn't necessarily stick to that. I think I have some things that are like later 96 or whatever. But thinking about what's going to come next in the next set of music, I was like, this is probably a pretty good cutoff point, because things actually do change pretty significantly.
Right.
For me, regardless of what I thought maybe changed, actually turns out.
Well, and the thing that is so interesting to me about this really this experiment that we're doing in sort of reflection and sort of almost like an archaeology.
Yeah.
Is how, because we're the same age, we went to the same high school, the same junior high.
Yeah.
You came to Dayton in 7th grade?
Yes. That was my first year there.
So, and we've been in several bands together. It stands to reason that there should be more things that are the same.
Well, so I think that's what's going to, show its face next time a lot more.
How that we start to coalesce a little more?
In certain ways, yeah, for sure.
Sure.
But yeah, this time I realized, like, last time was when we didn't get to choose what we listened to. This time was when we get to choose. And I realized that this is when I got way the fuck into music.
Yeah. Right. That's another thing that sort of really tripped me out, was realizing how much damn music I was consuming as a child in a meaningful way. Like, all of this meant something to me.
Yeah, totally.
I had a really hard time cutting it down to this list as well. Like, each song on here is there for a very specific reason, and there's sort of 3 or 4 more attached to it that I had to be like, meh, well, I'll let that one go.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that is a, I didn't think these would be as different as they are. So
I guess I didn't really know until I sat down and did it. But then once I started getting into it, I was like, oh, I'm going to have this stuff, and he is not going to know what this is in some cases.
There was some of it I've literally never, I'd heard of all of the artists.
Yeah.
But there were songs that's like, I've never heard this song.
Cool.
At all. So, okay. So where do you want to start at?
Ooh.
Where do you want to dig at? So I think that,
I don't know.
I think one of the, maybe we'll just riff on this. So there's one story that I want to tell because it's super important.
Cool.
So I already told the Eat the Rich story, and then the other really important thing is Wherever I May Roam.
Okay.
Because I was driving around with my mom and a friend of hers. They were both in the front seat, and her friend was smoking pot. And my mom's freaking out. She's like, "What are you doing? We're going to blah, 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 blah." And so then so this song comes on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And her friend says, "Oh, Terry, don't worry about it." And her friend, I'm like not wanting to say her name, but it was a woman.
Okay.
She like reaches down and she like cranks the radio up as far as it'll go, forgetting I'm in the back seat. And so I certainly have a contact high. I'm like 10 or 11 or something.
Oh, you're feeling it at this point.
And I'm hearing Wherever I May Roam. Just the first time I'm ever hearing it. I'm in the back seat of this car. I'm in the center. Like it's the perfect, I left my body because I didn't know sound could do what it was doing.
Wow.
And that was what really solidified me towards being into heavy music. That was the hook. That was what did it. And that was what sent me down that path. So the first 2 CDs that I bought, the first 3 CDs were Aerosmith Get a Grip, the Black Album, and the Last Action Hero soundtrack. So
quite a trio.
I think I got the Mighty Ducks 2 soundtrack in there too, but that didn't leave as much of a lasting impact. It was like, We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, and whoop, there it is.
Okay.
So
it's like kind of typical like 90s movie kid shit.
Right, yeah.
Okay, fair.
So, yeah, it's impossible to overstate what a big deal it was. Like how sort of like that's one of those hinge points. That's one of those pivot points in my life. Mm-hmm. And so, but then that sort of just sent me down, like I would just go down these rabbit holes. And I was like, well, man, if you like a band, then you like a band. So I got into everything Aerosmith. I loved all of it. I got into all of the eras. I loved the new stuff at the time. Like Get a Grip was the most recent album, and they had just put out the greatest hit big ones. And so you had, the song Deuces Are Wild was on the Beavis and Butthead soundtrack.
Yeah.
Beavis and Butthead Experience or whatever. There was that. But I got all of it, and I just took it all in because I had no sort of concept of, well, only some of an artist's output is good. I was like, well, I mean, I like this, then I'm gonna like all of it. And so this right here, this was my Christmas present in 6th grade. This is the Aerosmith.
Oh man,
this is the Aerosmith Box of Fire. Okay.
This is full of fire. I can verify. Yeah, this thing is intense. How many records are in here?
It's 12. So it's all of their Columbia releases. Okay. So it's their 70s up to the early 80s output. Now what's kind of lame about it is it's like 12 records, but like 5 of them or 6 of them are live records and greatest hits. So Columbia was milking it a bit.
Sure. Yeah, totally. They wanted to fill out this. They ordered boxes this size, and they needed to fill them out enough.
They knew in 1980 they knew that they were going to order boxes this size. So they're like, all right, well, we need to release another Classics Live. We need Classics Live 2 by Aerosmith, and but by me diving into that. And I could do a whole episode just about Aerosmith. But me diving into that, I think that it laid the groundwork for me eventually getting into funk music, honestly.
I could see that. Because
so much of their earlier stuff was sort of this, it was almost like a hard Motown kind of vibe. It's like you were taking the American blues that had then been filtered through the British sensibilities, and you had the British explosion or British invasion or whatever coming back, and then they were taking that but then adding sort of an R&B take from the rhythm section. Joey Kramer is very much like James Brown with a like Joey Kramer is very much like an R&B drummer, just a more heavy-handed R&B drummer, as opposed to, say, like a John Bonham, which John Bonham is that too, but John Bonham is just so much more bombastic, and Joey Kramer's not a very bombastic drummer. He's more of he's like a heavy pocket drummer. And so because him doing what he does and Tom Hamilton laying, like that rhythm section is what allows like Joe Perry to go out and Steven Tyler to go out in outer space and then still land on their feet. And so me being so infatuated with this old school 70s music as in this early agency period, whenever I'm making my choices, that I feel like that planted some seed into me getting into funk and soul music that didn't happen until like 20 years later, really. Maybe not 20, but a long ass time.
Substantially longer than you would have expected. Yeah.
That was not, that was not my sort of initial.
That's cool though, because I think I probably have things like that too. If I thought about it in that way, it sort of just, it didn't plant a seed. It like opened a door that you didn't really go through for a while, right? It just like gave you the option to do that, permission in a way.
Yeah. That's a good way to think about it. I mean, because I remember like there's a CD in here called Live Bootleg, and they do like a James Brown cover on it, Mother Popcorn, and so I remember thinking like at the time like, oh, okay, well then that means James Brown's good. That means James Brown's legit. That means James Brown's good stuff, As I mean, I'm like 10, I'm 11, And so then later on, when I see Brad Wilk from Rage Against the Machine talking about that in a Modern Drummer interview, that he would go to sleep and just listen to James Brown music on repeat, I'm like, oh, that's what you got to do.
Totally.
I went and got a James Brown CD and listened to it on repeat when I slept, So it, but but all these things like sort of connect in this weird, way, and the thing that sort of surprised me, sort of in broad strokes, when I sort of reflected on this, was how important video media was in determining my tastes. So a lot of the things from my playlist they come from the Last Action Hero soundtrack.
Right.
They come from and most of it, the biggest hinge point is this.
Totally.
The Woodstock 94 soundtrack, which I also had the VHS for.
Mm-hmm.
And so sort of similar to that, well, and then another whole section of it comes from this like 6 hours of MTV that my aunt taped for me. And I think this is going to be the main difference. This is the big cultural difference, is that
Absolutely.
I didn't have MTV.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I only had 6 hours of MTV.
The same 6 hours.
The same 6 hours that I would watch over and over, that my aunt had like sent me. She taped it one night and then sent it to me in the mail.
Oh, that fucking rules. Wow.
And she taped it like, it was like from midnight to 6 a.m. So it was all videos. It was no shows, no reality TV, just all videos.
Oh, it's great.
And so...
Do you remember what time period exactly it was? Like what year, what...
I can tell you what videos were on it.
Okay.
So...
That'll tell me what...
I think it was 95.
Okay.
I think it was 95 because it had... It's not the Tupac track that you put on, but the other big...
California Love.
Yes.
Okay.
It had that video on it, like with the Thunderdome and shit.
Yes.
And I had seen Mad Max in the Thunderdome, so I like knew what it was referencing, but I was like, rap music isn't for me. So, which I later got really, really into that album as an adult. But it had that. It had Red Hot Chili Peppers' Aeroplane. It had...
Okay.
That was where I got exposed to Korn. Had the Chutes and Ladders video.
Oh, interesting.
Garbage. Only Happy When It Rains was the video on there. Red Hot Chili Peppers' Aeroplane was on there.
You said that already.
I did.
But it could have been on there twice.
It probably was. So, but yeah, so those were the sort of the big ones that were on that. So yeah, so it looks like a lot of your experience was sitting there watching MTV.
Yeah, like what I came to realize over the course of making my list is that I was like voracious with music during that time period. And half of it came from MTV and half of it came from the radio. The buzz specifically was kind of the only thing I probably was listening to then. Because there was also like 101, which was the hard rock station, or the blues rock station. And then there was like 93.7, which was the classic rock station.
Right.
I didn't give a fuck about those. I was listening to the buzz all day.
And this was back when it was 107.5.
107.5, the buzz. Yeah, exactly. And so they play, I mean, for the time, they played a lot of good shit still.
How fucking weird was mid-90s music?
For real, man. it was kind of all over the place in a way.
Really was. It really, really was.
Because they played like the newest alternative stuff, but they also played some like older rock that maybe 101 would have been playing, I guess. And then they just played some weird stuff sometimes. So I was the kind of person who would sit in front of either of these methods of media and wait with a blank tape, VHS or cassette, for the thing that I wanted to hear and record it. And so the way that I found a lot of music was I would hear something, because what you had to do back in the day, if you heard something on the radio, MTV was a surefire. You would see the band and the album or the song name at the end because they showed it beginning and the end. If you're listening to the radio, there's zero guarantee, and in fact, you usually don't get the band or song title from the DJ after the song is finished.
Right.
So you just have to like pray that they said, all right, and that was, whatever,
Dude,
that was Real Big Fish with, Sellout.
Do you remember any like misconceptions of like for the longest time you thought that this song was a different band than it was?
I don't remember anything offhand, but I know that I did. I remember having that sensation for sure.
I remember thinking that the first Bush, like one of the first Bush single, like There's No Sex and Violence or whatever.
Everything's in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so confused that I couldn't find that on any of the Nirvana records that I had.
Ooh. Kurt rolls over
his grave.
Totally.
So, but, I was 10. I was 10. So, but yeah.
That's what they were going for, so it worked.
Right. It was like a cleaner, like a squeaky clean, like gets the oil changed on time version of Nirvana.
Just on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah.
That was a good album, though. 16 Stone was.
I love Machine Head. That song.
I mean, I love Machine Head too, but that's beside the point.
In any iteration, the Bush song, the Deep Purple album, the Metal Band, all of it's great.
Fair. So yeah, that was where all my picks came from essentially. I wasn't at this point. I was no longer getting music from anybody really. I was just finding it all myself in these ways, and that was what became most important to me.
Right. That rings true for me too. And I think that what's interesting too is that this period is, for me, you start to see where there's still some overlap of mine and my mother's sort of, there would be things that we would get into that we would both listen to. And then there would be things that where, and sort of the Woodstock 94 big net sort of really encapsulates that in a lot of ways, because we both really, really loved listening to Collective Soul and Candlebox.
Nice.
She wasn't so much into Nine Inch Nails though.
Fair.
And she wasn't so much into pre-Black Album Metallica.
Also fair.
Especially
on the video, probably like watching Nine Inch Nails throw like mud and keyboards and shit at each other. Such a good performance.
That performance won a Grammy.
Did it really?
It did.
Wow.
That live performance of Happiness and Slavery won like the best metal Grammy that year or whatever.
Best controlled destruction of a stage. Demolition rather.
I cannot put into words how much of an effect that Nine Inch Nails Happiness and Slavery performance on Woodstock 94 had on me. I can't. I have every frame of that memorized, and I know everyone's moves. and it was like I did so much air guitar trying to look like Robin Thicke.
You could choreograph your own performance, your off-Broadway performance of the Woodstock 94 video.
I could.
Yeah.
I could do a one-man show of like, and this is when Joe Cocker does this, and this is when Trent throws this, and then he pours the bottle on his head and he throws it, and then the keyboardist hops down, and then the drummer goes, and they do a weird edit. Like, it's ingrained, but that intensity,
yeah,
it was intoxicating. It was intoxicating. Like that. And sort of that the visual intensity of the performance could match the sonic intensity. And because, and it I think another reason that Metallica's betrayal that came with Load. I think another reason that didn't hit me as hard as other people is that my first visual of Metallica was how they looked at Woodstock 94.
I'm kind of not remembering now. I know they're in here.
So this is a whole other thing. So
which one is it?
There's all these photos. I think it's the other one that has all the photos.
Yeah, this is a whole other part of this Woodstock 94 thing.
So they don't tell you which artist is.
Right.
So I just had to flip through here and I was like, I think this is Metallica.
Dude, I can't tell you how many fucking times I stared at this for so long trying to think about who was who.
Do you know who I thought was Metallica?
So this is James Hetfield, right?
That is James Hetfield
so
with a mullet.
He's got like the mullet.
With a nasty mullet.
Super nasty mullet. So who did you think?
Here, I'll find it.
Okay.
I'll find it. I'll find the picture that I thought was Metallica.
Okay.
Because I know exactly what it is.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they had short hair by this time. I guess that was the next year.
No.
Okay.
No.
But it wasn't. It wasn't 80s Metallica at this point.
I thought this was Metallica.
Fucking Collective Soul.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought Collective Soul was Metallica.
Because it's like four guys with guitars jamming out with long hair, and you're like, of course, it's got to be Metallica.
It's got to be Metallica. It's got to be Metallica.
Oh man.
And so,
yeah.
So go and look at that footage of Metallica at Woodstock 94, and what you're going to see is you're going to see James Hetfield with a mullet, like a rat tail mullet, not even like a bold mullet, just a weird mullet. Lars still has long hair. Jason has a shaved head and looks like just a broy jock from gym class. And Kirk Hammett has dreadlocks, and half of them are like put in a ponytail and the other half are like draped on his face. And so them like cutting their hair, I was like, so what? Like, it didn't, I don't think that it hit me the same, because my first visual of Metallica was not, was how they looked at Woodstock 94, which is weird. They never looked like that ever again, before or after.
Right.
And so, but this whole thing, like I thought that Les Claypool in here was Joe Cocker.
So I think I did too. I think that was exactly who I thought.
It's like, well, he's wearing America shit. He's old.
Yeah, because you can't tell like what he actually is looking like, because he's got this like American flag shirt, and he's like his glasses and this weird hat, and just looks like a goober. He's a goober, but this. I could do an episode on this book alone. Probably.
I know.
And it's I'm just noticing that you've got the Chili Peppers in here with their light bulb hats, and then on the next page I was like, well, wait a minute, if that's the Chili Peppers, who is this?
That's Perry Farrell.
Wait, I thought it was Dave Navarro.
No, that's Porno for Pyros.
Well, shit, that could have been Jane's Addiction. That would have been close. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, such a weird thing that was. Yeah, but I had that exact same experience of like going through there, like matching names to faces.
Right. So that, but having like that, all these visuals attached to the music and like the intensity of the Nine Inch Nails performance. I forgot Jackal was on here. But yeah, like that sort of just totally, I don't know. It left such an impact.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
And so, and it also exposed me. Like, this soundtrack is really great because it really it's a really wide net that they cast with this lineup. Because you have let's see who else is on there. Like Crosby, Stills and Nash is on there. Like Paul Rodgers is on there playing with Slash, and
like so you've got some like classic rock like that. You've got Paul Rodgers. You got the Neville Brothers in there. You got Traffic,
right?
Peter Gabriel coming in at the end with the world music. But then you've got like weirder stuff like Porno for Pyros and Primus are kind of right together. Jackal, I guess, is also pretty strange.
Yeah, Jackal's pretty weird.
Just
Blind Melon.
Blind Melon. You got Salt and Peppa is like in there.
Right, Cypress Hill's
in there. And then Bob Dylan as well. Just a really interesting eclectic collection.
Right, and it was so cool because I watched all of it. I didn't watch all of it every time. I didn't watch that Dylan performance every time I watched this later. But
I never listened to that song, I don't think.
Maybe not. And so, but even though I didn't get into all of these artists, all of them being on this really validated and legitimized all of them.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so, but it also did leave quite the impact that hearing this live version of For Whom the Bell Tolls, Metallica full clip doing their, hey, and the whole live approach to For Whom the Bell Tolls, how it's so, so different than it is on the Ride the Lightning album. But I think that led me to, I got really, really into Ride the Lightning. That always felt like my Metallica album, my post sort of Black Album, Metallica album,
Cool.
And so the reason I picked the song Ride the Lightning was because I think that was my first exposure to these really sort of progressive, kind of long, winding arrangements. Every other song on this list has a pretty straightforward
I was noticing that, yeah.
arrangement, except for Ride the Lightning. So the other really progressive track on there is that Queensryche track.
I was kind of surprised to see that. I was thinking that they were on here, but they're on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I should say also about this one is I also got obviously like way into this album, but it was not till later on. It was not until probably like, I don't know, 97, 98, like a bit later.
I see.
Because I didn't have CD player until like 97.
I see. Do you know where I bought this at? Media Play.
I vaguely remember what that is. It was like a blue sign, like yellow trim. Okay, yeah, I remember that.
It was a gigantic store in Humble.
Yeah.
And it was like a Best Buy.
It's what became Blockbuster Music later, isn't it? No, it's a different place?
No, it was bigger than that. It's like a Hobby Lobby or something.
Oh, it was like a Best Buy, like you're saying. It was like a Best Buy size also.
Yes, and it was in 4 quadrants. Like one quadrant was books, one quadrant was videos, one quadrant was games and like video games, and one quadrant was music.
Oh, yeah. I remember that now.
I bought so many things in this era I bought there because they were only in business for a brief period of time.
True.
So, but yeah.
Anyway.
And so, so are these all, so all of these things are all on your list, are all things that had videos attached to them?
Not all of them. Well, you know what?
Videos or the buzz?
I think a lot of these actually did. And so, yeah, I guess in contrast to your list where you've got sort of a theme for some of these and like a sort of a through line, you got like a few Aerosmith tracks, you got like things that are from these collections in here. Right. That is nothing like that at all on mine. Mine is completely just disparate shit from everywhere.
Right.
All over the place. And yeah, I think the vast majority of the stuff from MTV, I would say, was just videos that I watched. But there are some specific ones that came from like watching Beavis and Butthead watch videos.
Yeah.
Stuff that I would never really seen anymore because MTV, even at that time, weren't playing videos or they weren't playing a given video for a long period of time. So they didn't play the same video, like the Bjork video is a good example. I don't think they played that video at all when I was watching MTV for videos, but Beavis and Butthead watched it. So I saw it and I heard that song. That sort of thing, right?
Okay.
And I think that actually happened for a few of these. But yeah, I don't really have a good place to like start talking about any of this shit. So if you have questions, feel free. So there's no good entry point here.
Okay, so one of the things that hit me like in the first 2 tracks that was like
everything's in alphabetical order by artist, by the way. I don't know if you could tell.
Are you kidding?
Nope. That's why Tupac is first.
Oh, because it's like the letter or the digit 2, the letter 2.
And then 311, yeah. The natural progression.
Oh my God. You fucking dodo.
I figured you would notice that.
I didn't, not at all. Well, because I spell Tupac with a T-U, so, and.
Tupac.
Well, the first thing that hit me was I was like, man, Robert listened to music that had good bass lines in it.
Okay.
Because there's a really killer bass line in that Tupac track.
Yeah.
311 has great bass.
Yeah.
Allison Chains.
Yeah, totally.
Blues Traveler, all sort of stuff. So that was a thing that hit me right off the bat.
Good eye there, or good ear, I suppose.
And so 311, so a lot of these bands, and it sort of sounds like we have like a sort of reciprocal thing going on where we ended up being into the same things, a lot of the same things, but at different times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I didn't get into 311 until the mid 2000s.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Because there was a mutual friend, we'll call him JB, that would annoy the piss out of me because he would just walk around singing "Beautiful Disaster."
Oh, totally.
And so I was like, "Fuck that band, fuck that number band." So
I have very specific memories of being at well, probably just hanging out with him, but a different JB, if you will.
oh yeah, there were two. I'm talking about the one that I'm not talking about the one that we started a band with. I'm not talking about Jeremy.
Oh, you're talking about Josh.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about too. Though.
Okay, good.
Okay, good. I can picture either
Who
one.
knew there were so many JBs in our life?
Well, I could picture Jeremy trying to annoy you by doing that also. That's the thing.
But I respected Jeremy.
Whoa. Okay. So I have very specific memories of being at like lunch in seventh grade.
That's not true. Hold on. I gotta address that. Me and Jeremy were sort of like musical brothers
Yeah.
at the time. And so whatever one of us got into sincerely became homework for the other one for this period of our lives.
Right.
So everything that I'm watching and listening to, we're also watching and listening to together.
It's like filtering through each other.
Yes,
These things. Yeah.
because we were learning. We decided to start a band before he had a guitar, kind of thing. So, or he might have had a guitar for 3 months or something. So we're learning how to play our instruments together. There was a period where I was just as good at guitar as he was.
Right. Right.
You know, where I was like, no, this is how Enter Sandman goes. I know because I've heard it. And he hadn't heard it. And he's just trying to learn it from the music notation in the tab.
I mean,
And
it's an important part
so
of listening to the song.
So it's not that I, you know, and then Josh sort of came into the fold a little later, and he was the bass player in me and Jeremy's first band. And Josh was just in a different strand of music. He had an older brother, you know, and his personality he kind of liked to irritate people. That was just kind of his thing.
Yeah.
So it's not that I didn't respect him.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, you know that, but I don't want anyone else who listens to this who knows that. Like, it's not that I don't respect him. It's just that Jeremy and I had a very, you know, we were like brothers, and so I mean, like musical brothers. Me and Josh were
like the Neville brothers.
Fuck you.
Like the Almond brothers.
The Almond brothers.
The Almond brothers.
We're just some nut farmers from down south, the Almond brothers.
Anyone but the Mounds brothers. No one.
So, but me and Josh were more. We were more really, really great friends. But musically, we sort of went our own ways pretty quickly into high school.
Sure.
So whereas like me and Jeremy played together until he moved out of the country. So
yeah.
So anyway, but
different wavelengths there.
But yeah, so yeah, that was a barrier for me getting into 311 because Josh would just and
I really don't remember that specifically, but I can totally see it happening.
And it would make me so mad.
Well, so to in the same vein, I have very specific memories of like sitting at lunch in 7th grade with like Josh and like Chris Connor and Andy Connor, and just singing the lyrics to Down over and over again out loud for everybody to be annoyed with.
Dude, that was our first band. It was me, Jeremy, Chris Connor, and Josh Baker. That was our first band.
Nice.
So
anyway, I got into 311 pretty early as well.
Gotcha.
I guess I should.
Now were they? Because a lot of people I talked to they end up being like a gateway band, or
311 does.
Yeah, or they sort of. Like some people I've talked to that sort of are in our sort of same sphere, like primarily rock guys. Like 311 becomes their gateway and like opens all these doors into like funk and reggae and all these types of things for them.
Okay.
Did 311 do any of that for you?
Not directly, but I think like there was a time where I started getting into like dub weirdly.
Okay.
For like a couple of years, I just like started discovering it. And that could have been where that came from, I guess, now that I think about it. But no, not directly.
Well, did you stay a 311 fan?
Yes.
Okay. Oh shit.
Yeah.
That was a quick answer.
Yeah, so a lot of people fucking hate 311. A lot of people think they're just like kind of garbage
Oh,
and kind
really?
of bullshit.
Really?
And they kind of are in a way. It's like they do a 311 cruise and shit. Like, fucking what? Okay, no. And they're kind of like, I love 311.
Folk.
They're kind of fucking goofy though.
Why is 311 bullshit?
They're like a bunch of fucking white dudes just trying to be like reggae. And they're just not, but they're really good.
They're really good at the thing they do.
Yeah. They're undeniably bullshit, but I also just love them.
That's really funny.
So, yeah.
So speaking of white dudes wanting to be something else, so I guess it was 2 years ago, I spent like a month maybe or 2 months or something. I listened to nothing but James Brown. Like that was pretty much, that was all that was in my car. That was most of what I listened to for like 6 weeks or something.
Right.
Now then when I went back after that and sort of really absorbing James Brown's music and trying to like replicate a lot of it on the drums and whatnot, then when I went back and listened to Aerosmith's version of Mother Popcorn, I was far less impressed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is really cool that y'all like that, but this is not right, guys. This shit might fly in Boston. But
Well, yeah, probably.
So
Anyway, yeah, I mean, I want to say like another aspect of these lists, I think that we sort of tacitly agreed on was that we're not going to put like we have Nirvana songs on here. Well, we have the same Nirvana song actually.
well,
But-
I put those on there because it was extremely important to me.
Same here, but just as a good example here is like
Yes.
we're not going to put "Smells Like Teen Spirit" because everybody knows that song,
Right.
right? So I kind of ended up taking that track for every single artist on here. Didn't really intend to, but I just sort of ended up doing that.
Yeah, because if if you're gonna put, well, like you said, if you're gonna put 311, then everyone knows that if you heard 311 in 1996 or 95, that you heard the song Down.
Yeah, like if there's one 311 song, it's probably that one, and so I have all mixed up on here.
Right.
Which
You know.
also just a killer song.
It's great.
It's a great video.
It's a great
and
song.
All this stuff. It's
I think so when I did get into them, my favorite 311 songs were their ballads. Like when I finally like got into them, it was because of Amber and because of their version of Love Song.
oh yeah, okay,
So it was their poppiest,
yeah, right.
most mellow sellout stuff that I was like, this is amazing. Like I didn't need their like pseudo heavy stuff, do 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 do. Keep that shit. I don't.
Well, okay, we'll talk more about that on the next episode.
Okay.
Definitely.
So the next thing you have, or the next thing on here was like Alanis, and so something I wanted to point out was it is impossible to overstate how pervasive Alanis Morissette was in 1995.
Totally. Like I went back and listened to this album just again a few years. I go back and listen to it every couple of years or whatever. And I forget every single time how many of these songs were everywhere.
Right.
Like half this album was just everywhere all the time.
Right.
Just You Ought to
Right.
Know and Ironic and One Hand in My Pocket and Head Over Feet
Yeah.
and just all this shit.
Right.
And then the one I have on here, which is All I Really Want,
Yeah.
was maybe like the redheaded stepchild of that group in a way.
Sure.
I feel like it got maybe the least play.
And I didn't really get into her. I got really, really into her second album in the early 2000s for whatever reason. I don't know why. And it's really an interesting tidbit is that there's her live drummer was Taylor Hawkins.
Right.
And there's a DVD that I saw somewhere of Taylor Hawkins just killing it with that band live while Alanis is running around in like a t-shirt playing to an arena of 20,000 people doing sort of a proto Billie Eilish impersonation almost, like totally channeling that same vibe. and Taylor just destroying it. It's incredible. And then her next drummer was this dude named Gary Novak, who was known for playing like jazz fusion and playing with Chick Corea and shit. It was so weird that was
couldn't have gotten further away. Almost.
Right. That was the direction she chose to go on the second album. But that second album is amazing. It has a really cool vibe to it. But
she never really made anything else that was like Jagged Little Pill.
How could you?
And Jagged Little Pill itself was like so unlike her previous couple albums, which were like just bubblegum pop.
There were albums before Jagged Little Pill?
Exactly.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, they're just pop albums.
How about that shit?
And then she got together with the producer of Jagged Little Pill. I forget his name at this point, but like
yeah.
And then they made that, and it's like,
how about that?
Fucking A, dude. This album's killer.
Well, and it really captured a moment. It seemed, and
yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, so. All right, so then like you have like Allison Chains here. So I had the Allison Chains track from Last Action Hero, which that track's just amazing to me. There's
it's a great track.
What I remember loving about it when I was a kid was there's just a vibe and a tone and a sound and a feeling that you got from that riff and those vocals that you just could not get anywhere else.
That's how Allison Chains feels for me, just as a whole, though.
But for some reason, I never really got into them. But I had 2 Allison Chains albums. I had the self-titled one, which I listened to a lot. I know it. I know all the songs, but it didn't really like grab me the way that other albums were grabbing me. And then I have the unplugged one, which like I like the hits on there, but so for whatever reason, Allison Chains didn't really grab me. Did they? And I know you're a huge Allison Chains fan. Did it happen from the start? Did you hear them and then be like, "This is my shit"?
I don't really remember honestly, but like when you're talking about Aerosmith earlier, that was like there are a scant few bands that I can just say I like this band. Period. Their entire catalog, you put any song in front of me and I'll listen to it and love it. Allison Chains is one of those bands, for sure.
Even with, I almost called him Robert Duvall. Let's consider an alternate timeline where Robert Duvall sings for Allison Chains.
So the answer is no, because I haven't listened to any of those new albums.
None.
That's not true. I listened to Blue Turns to Gray or whatever the fuck it's called. The first one that they did with him.
So you just consider that a different band?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, without Lane Staley, it's just a different thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the new stuff is bad.
Sure.
It's just not the same. It's not. They don't do the very specific things like you're talking about that made Allison Chains so like that work so well, like so seductive in a weird way.
I hear what you're saying.
And that. For the albums that you had, like the self-titled album is the one with the dog on the front, the 3-legged dog.
That was the last one they did before he died.
That was the last studio album, yeah.
Right.
That's a weird album.
It is.
It's just a strange album. Like there's so many weird, long, drawn-out, droning tracks on there.
You're right.
Except for like Again, I think is the one.
And Heaven Beside You is the one that was the one you heard on the radio a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's just like really long, droning, slow, and a lot of that works really well in the unplugged session. Interestingly, and I've come to like that album a lot more. But it is different from like Facelift or Dirt, or I mean that's kind of all they had. Then they had Sap and Jar of Flies, the 2 EPs.
So I went today. After I'd listened to all the lists, I started to like, all right, well, let me go dig into some of these rabbit holes here. And I listened to the Jar of Flies EP. And I was like, this is fucking amazing.
Dude, it's one of the best pieces of like recorded music as far as I'm concerned. Straight up.
It's so good. And so I'm assuming that you picked that one track, Wasp and Whale.
Whale and Wasp.
Whale and Wasp, because it's weird.
It is weird, but
and everyone's heard like No Excuses or whatever.
Yeah, the rest of that album, I mean, yeah, pretty much. But it's like that track specifically does that thing for me. Like it gives me that feeling. It's like no one else was doing shit like this.
Yeah.
This was a Seattle grunge band, and they didn't sound anything like.
That was a thing I was thinking about as
Yeah.
well. So that is kind of an interesting thing that we should probably talk about. That is just sort of how pervasive the grunge aesthetic was in ways that I haven't really been able to articulate and unpack until the past few years.
Yeah.
Of this sort of, because grunge was a reaction to sort of what came before it. And the main thing that grunge was selling was a type of sincerity.
Yeah.
And that, even though we were very much into metal and were making heavy music, this idea of sincerity was extremely important to us.
Yeah.
Even into the mid 2000s, when we were playing out and we were playing in other cities and things like that, we were such dicks about, like, if we didn't believe you, like if we didn't believe, like if there was any sense of that you were playing your music for other people, then we hated you.
Yeah.
To a fault.
Yeah.
To a fault.
Oh, we were just dicks also in a way.
We very much were.
So
we very much were. But I look back now and I connect that to sort of this, our first experiences of listening to contemporary music. It was grunge. It was about this really sincere, weird music and putting these things sort of back to back with each other and putting Metallica and Aerosmith back to back with Stone Temple Pilots and Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins. The contrast is stark, and not just sonically, but sort of in the tone of the lyrics. And what I was able to sort of put my finger on, looking at all this in a zoomed out way, is that there is a confidence in pre-grunge music, I guess, or pre-grunge rock music, the pre-grunge rock music that I was listening to in Van Halen, Aerosmith.
Oh, yeah. It's like nothing but in some cases.
Right. And it might not necessarily be confidence. It's at least confidence in how the world works.
Yeah.
And so even Metallica stuff, like there is a firmness to it, almost a stoicism,
Right.
Of, okay, well, I'm gonna talk about something really fucked up, you know what I mean? But this is reality, and this is what reality is. And it sort of made me think about our last episode where we were talking about art records and whatnot, and sort of understanding again, like what threw people so much about Load for Metallica or the pop record for U2. And it was not just a sonic change or an image change. Excuse me. It was a tonal change and a perspective change in the lyrics, because there's a lot of, like all of a sudden on Load or on pop, it's not about confidence. There's like some doubt and some weirdness in it. It's abstract. All of a sudden, I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a lot of doubt in the themes of the lyrics on Load, but there's definitely abstraction. Mm-hmm. The lyrics are very abstract compared to before. It was like, I know exactly what this song is about, and on Load, you're like, I think this is about drugs, but I'm not sure.
Right.
And so, but that was something that I thought I had while I was piecing this together, is that, listening to Stone Temple Pilots and all the lyrics just feel, does anyone know what any Stone Temple Pilots song is about? It all just feels like stream of consciousness.
Yeah, not so much.
But it's incredible. It's amazing. And it makes me feel things.
Yep.
And I have no idea what it's fucking about. And that's so different from what rock music had been just a few years prior.
Yeah. Like, I don't have a good way to sort of lay it out like that in my mind, but the way that I feel that, I guess, is that when I would listen to things like old Metallica or anything from the 80s or before that, really, despite some of it being like overtly about weird shit, if not like occult shit in a weird way, think like old like Zeppelin and things like that were very like mysterious,
sure,
and whatever. And Metallica and Slayer are very just like fucked up shit for the time anyway.
Sure.
I never really painted a picture in my mind about any of that stuff. Because like you said, it was very like matter of fact in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It was very less like, here it is, it's pretty straight ahead. Whereas
Right.
anything like Purple, the album Purple, for example, by Stone Temple Pilots, that was like one of the first alternative albums that I really listened to. And that whole album is just a trip of just like bizarre pictures forming in your mind, and that's what I love so much about it.
Yeah, it is a lot of imagery. I hadn't really thought about it like that.
It's
You're
just
right.
weird shit to think about.
Right. It's like that, like the as opposed to, even like Metallica's like their Lovecraft stuff, like the thing that should not be. It's not like it's called the thing that should not be. It's very clear. It's
Right.
not the thing that maybe should maybe not be, maybe sometimes.
Right. And that's weird because like if you've ever read a Lovecraft story, it's very vague.
Yes.
It's very nondescript in a creepy way, and that's what is creepy about it.
Right.
Whereas if you're writing a song about it, almost by necessity, it has to be descriptive, and it just you can't get the same effect from it. So despite the fact that they're writing a song about a Lovecraft adjacent thing, it's not going to have the same vibe.
Right.
And that's fine, and that song's great, but it's not going to get you that.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, like that sort of that abstraction. That and it became okay in grunge music. It became, and this sort of became a hallmark of nu metal that really resonated with us. That was really important. It became in grunge music. It became okay to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
It was okay to be vulnerable inside of music that had distorted guitars and big in your face drums. And I don't know that was the case before, because I think of
it
Pearl
certainly
Jam.
wasn't popular before,
Right.
if anything. I'm
Right.
sure bands were doing it, but not at a level like that.
Right, and not in a maybe in a way that just wasn't tracking the way that Pearl Jam tracked, I guess, in a sense. Because speaking of Pearl Jam, I have to say something.
Okay.
Because I didn't get into Pearl Jam until much later.
Okay.
I didn't like them at the time. There's a reason they're not on my list.
I gotcha.
And
So I have 2 Pearl Jam songs on my list.
right. And so what I wanted to say about them was what I felt about them at the time was so fucking stupid. and it sort of plays into the thing we talked about last time about this whole narrative in the music press at the time of rock or metal versus alternative and all this sort of stuff. And you would see interview footage, like when Kiss did their reunion tour in 96 and 97, like they would talk about well, we came to show bands how it was done. That when you put on a show, you don't just go out there and look at your shoelaces. People are tired of seeing that. That would be the kind of shit that Gene Simmons would say. And
totally.
so then you sort of extrapolate that out and well, that's what grunge bands are doing. That's what alternative bands are doing. And well, what alternative band am I hearing on the radio? I'm hearing Pearl Jam. So so you assume that that's what they're doing. These guys don't, they barely know how to play their instruments, whatever,
Right.
whatever bullshit Gene was slinging. And don't get me wrong, I love Kiss. I went, I have a Kiss phase that I went through.
Okay.
Okay.
I do not.
I do.
Okay, fair.
I do. I
Gotcha.
do. I could give you 10 Kiss songs that you could put on anytime, any day, and I will smile and love every second of it. Paul Stanley is a gift from the gods of music, as far as I'm concerned. However, but hearing shit like that, and I mean, it wasn't just Gene Simmons saying that. That was what all the fucking.
It was a pervasive
It
attitude.
was what all the
Totally.
butthurt fucking rock guys were saying because they weren't getting radio play and tour support anymore.
Yeah, all the hair metal bands before it became incredibly sad for them to be doing so 10 years later.
Right. And I mean, and there is a tangent there of how a lot of death metal bands suffered because of this too, which is sort of its whole other thing. Yeah. A lot of death metal bands, because there was this weird death metal boom in 92 or something, 90 to 92, and they all got signed, and then they all stopped getting tour support and shit like that in 93 or 94 because because metal became a bad word.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but it's so you think about these stereotypes that were floating around at the time of they stare at their shoelaces and they can't play their instrument, and then you cut to Pearl Jam and Mike McCready is playing like shred your face guitar heroisms all up and down the stage, and you can't find Eddie Vedder because he's literally hanging from the rafters.
Literally the rafters, yeah.
And it's like, gosh, what a boring show. And it's just it's like so predictable. They don't even know if they believe it. You know, it's just such horse shit that that a band like Pearl Jam could ever be accused of anything, of being less than amazing musicians, of being less than sincere, of putting on less than an amazing show. And that's the thing. It seems stupid. I would imagine that hearing people say that, hearing that was ever said about Pearl Jam should be a shock to someone right now. But that was the kind of shit that was slung around in the mid-90s about alternative bands.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, testament to that is look at all those unplugged sessions that happened around then. You had Nirvana, you had STP, you had Pearl Jam.
Did STP do one?
Yes,
Okay.
extremely good.
Okay.
Yeah, Pearl Jam was a very good one. You had Allison Chains, which is in my opinion the best. Like if you've ever seen the video of that performance, also
We all know the best ones were Eric Clapton and Kiss.
oh, did Kiss do one?
They did.
God damn it!
What's the point, right?
Oh boy. Oh boy. Anyway, yeah. So the bands like that were able to do that. You know.
I see what you're saying.
We're able to transition into that format and make it work. Like
I understand what you're
better in some cases.
Right, I understand what you're saying. That Nirvana Unplugged album is shit. that album. Sorry, that's not what I meant. That album is so fucking good. It is still so good. Every second of it.
Yeah, totally.
It's unfathomable how good that record is.
It really is, and it's so like I probably go back and watch the Allison Chains one once every couple of months, and then Nirvana one like once a year or so. Mm-hmm. And it hit me hard the last time I went back to watch the Nirvana one, just how much of a big middle finger that is to everybody.
Really? In what way?
It's like 80% covers, and they just don't give a shit what anyone wants. If you watch the full performance, it's like up on YouTube.
Okay.
Or there's a DVD I think they released. It's just like Kurt just talking shit to everybody the whole time.
Really?
Just not caring at all that but they're there to play music, but they don't care what you want to hear. And it was just such an interesting
right.
Wow.
Right, and it's so funny that there was ever a moment that we would have talked shit on Nirvana or that aesthetic because that's exactly the kind of thing that we were trying to channel 10 years later.
We literally did that.
We literally did those things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I remember there was something hearing Dave Grohl say in an interview of, like, he was talking about how much they practiced. You know, like they practiced like 8 hours a day or something. He said something that was something that tracked as like, well, it's a fucking, you guys practice a fucking lot. But he says like, we cared about being a really great band. And I think that's what's lost or was lost in that narrative at the time was that, okay, well, these guys aren't trying to be guitar heroes. These guys aren't trying to get guitar endorsements. They're trying to be a great band. So it's a different kind of virtuosity.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying, like that does sort of make sense that, and I mean, and that was the whole rub of the era was that, you know, Nevermind wasn't supposed to do what it did.
Right.
Because it just was not, like, I think it cost like $30,000 or something to make that record. I don't know where I came with that number. I'm sorry. I don't know why it's a number in my head.
Wikipedia.
Someone correct me. But the point is that was a record, like Geffen had signed them and they were like, all right, well, we're going to make this record and it'll make our money back and maybe a little bit more. Because whenever a record company has an album that they think is going to do that, they invest in it. and they can kind of have their hands on the wheel, and they can control the rollout of it and things like that. And that's not what happened with Nevermind. That shit happened kind of on accident, and then they were scrambling to keep up
overnight, essentially.
Right. And so, like, the tour started and they were playing venues that were one size, and then the tour ended and they were playing arenas,
yeah.
that kind of crazy stuff. And so the whole record industry started hemorrhaging and sort of going and signing up all of these other artists. They would go to every city and find, and just,
where's the next Seattle, basically?
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Like that's like Clutch got caught up in that. Someone shows up and is like, gives the, because
in like Virginia or whatever the fuck they were from,
right, like DC
area, yeah.
And so they would give them, offer them like a, and that's what all these record companies did, because it was almost more about signing the next Nirvana.
Yeah.
So that some other record company didn't have them.
Yeah.
So you would just go and you would find all these young bands and you'd give them like $5,000 and sign them to your record label, and then maybe they're going to be the next big thing. And a lot of bands got fucked so hard on this, because you'd get like a $5,000 signing bonus, and it would be like, well, you got to pay up, but you now owe, you have to pay us that back, and you have to pay us all the expenses of recording and all this sort of stuff, blah 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 blah, through your record sale. It was, a lot of guys got fucked.
Right. I wonder if that was kind of the last big boom of that happening. I feel like boy bands in the late 90s might have had that happen. And then I'm trying to think if, like, did emo bands and have that happen in the early 2000s?
I think there was some of it that happened with nu metal.
But maybe it didn't happen as badly as it did then.
Yeah, it wasn't on that scale.
Because I feel like by that time we were starting to get towards, like, digital and internet.
Right. And the thing is that, you were trying to, in the late 90s, or, you were trying to scoop up nu metal bands and whatnot. There was like an influx of that, but that was sort of a niche thing. Like, there was very few nu metal bands that were getting like radio play. Yeah. It's very different than the situation with, when you had Soundgarden, Stone Temple Pilots. Are Stone Temple Pilots from Seattle? Is that for two?
No, they're from California, I think. So they're somewhere else. LA.
Where? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're from some not Seattle place. I'm an idiot for trying to use that as a second point in my. But you have, so it was like it
was like Soundgarden. It was Nirvana. It was Pearl Jam.
Right.
It was like Mudhoney was a big one at the time.
Right. Even Candlebox is from Seattle.
Candlebox from Seattle. Yeah.
Allison Chains.
Yeah.
Is that
Yep.
like and like just like a city that's like going to take up 50% of the radio play on modern rock radio.
Pretty much.
It's unprecedented, right?
Like the Seattle scene was a thing.
Right. And so I don't...
Weird thing to think about.
Right. So another thing that was interesting about your list was sort of how much R&B was on it.
Yeah.
Or something that surprised me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you consider this Tupac track R&B?
Well,
or do you consider rap? It's I Ain't Mad at You.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a rap song. I mean rap and R&B.
Okay.
Because you also have like the No Diggity.
So we got No Diggity, which is
kind of right down the middle, I guess.
Yeah.
And you have that. You have Nas.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, If I Rule the World. No Diggity, If I Rule the World, those were huge MTV songs.
Okay.
Those were like everywhere all the time. And so these were like some of the first couple of, and I got Fantasy by Mariah Carey. I guess you could throw that
right,
in
yeah,
there too.
yeah, that's the other one.
And these were like huge all over MTV, and you see them all the time. So I really just got like inundated with that and just sort of loved it over time. But this was sort of like the sort of gateway into like R&B and rap for me.
I see what you're saying.
In a way. Into like actual R&B and rap.
Right.
As opposed to like MC Hammer's Addams Family track.
Yeah, I started off listening to Nas, but then eventually I discovered the real shit with MC Hammer.
With the Addams Family Values soundtrack. Know what I mean? Yeah, man, like No Diggity. What a fucking great song that is.
Dude, all of it's great.
Dude,
all
it's
of it's
so
great.
good.
I really liked the Dr. Dre song. And
Keep your heads ringing.
You're right. Because I hadn't heard it. I hadn't heard any of these really. Well,
okay.
I feel like I'd heard No Diggity, but
yeah.
I hadn't heard.
That's one you could probably pick up by osmosis over time.
Sure. And like I got really, really into Nas a few years ago.
Right.
I haven't heard a single song of his that I don't love. So from
fair.
all the eras, like you just drop the needle fucking anywhere. Like his most
Fair.
recent thing that came out like a week or two ago. Yep. Oh, that sounds great. You know, the shit he did with Kanye. Oh, that's great. The shit he did in the mid-thought. It's all great. It's all because he, no matter what, it has his vibe to it.
Right.
If he's singing on it, it has his vibe, and it's such a cool fucking vibe.
Yeah, no argument. So something about the No Diggity video specifically is that it's Blackstreet, it's Dr. Dre, and it is Queen Pen, who I don't know if ever showed up in much else, but she's got a verse at the end. It's pretty good.
Right.
And you got Dre kind of going throughout, just doing his little drops in there every so often. The video, though, I don't know if you remember at the time, there were these, was it Sprite or 7-Up? I can't remember, commercials. And they featured Anthony Hardaway from the Orlando Magic at the time.
Okay.
NBA team. And so you had, his nickname was Penny Hardaway. And so you also had this little puppet. They named him Little Penny. And it's this little puppet of Anthony Hardaway.
What the fuck?
So there was this whole commercial thing they had going on with these two characters. For whatever reason, in the No Diggity video, you got Little Penny, the puppet, showing up playing keyboards. And so sometimes it pans over to the puppet and he's like staring, like smiling at the camera. And so at some point in the song, they say something like, Teddy fucking light it up or something like that. And that's, in the video, that's when Little Penny starts singing. It's fucking awesome, dude. It's great. It's so weird.
Man, I love this idea because of like this is in the days when music videos cost millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I mean,
yeah.
It's not unheard of.
When they made like a big deal about a new music video.
Right. And so like the idea of someone just like throwing money at something is like, all right, so now the puppet's gonna sing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's happening. The puppet's gonna fucking sing.
Yeah. So in the first place, I was like, look at this weird shit. But on the second place, I was like, this song is fantastic. And
yeah. I feel like, now this is totally just a weird hot take. And I'm not a connoisseur of Dr. Dre. I like everything that I've heard, but I'm not gonna claim. I'm not gonna claim. But so
you're not a Drainiac.
I'm not, and I'm not like
I don't know if that's a thing. Or
I
not.
don't know what
Probably
it is. But I feel like Dr. Dre is a great producer and a great composer, and he just through sheer willpower like willed himself into being a good rapper.
I mean, he was in NWA, right? So
yeah.
he had like backup there. So
right, but he didn't. He was just the guy. He didn't like. He wasn't the MC in NWA.
Right.
And so, but like, okay, because when you listen to his verses, like it's like they're so clever, right? Like the way that he writes, it's really clever, and I don't know, like I feel like I can like see him like doing 10 iterations of each fucking line, because it's not his flow or his voice that's particularly interesting.
Yeah.
You know, but his rhymes keep you engaged because of how much, and I don't know, it was a weird sort of connection, but I was like, man, it felt like that motherfucker worked so goddamn hard on these verses.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but I think you're kind of right. And I'm starting to wonder now, like when Eminem came up, he became Dre's like protege.
Right.
Right. And I'm starting to wonder, because that's what Eminem had, like in spades, right? He was like one of the best of that specific thing ever. I'm starting to wonder if that's what Dre like saw in him.
Maybe, and because not to in any way imply
Like himself is what I mean.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Not to in any way imply like that Nas doesn't bust his ass writing his lyrics or anything like that.
Right.
But you could give Nas the phone book, and he could read that, and it would sound like Nas. It would have that vibe and be
Or Tupac, like for example, like
sure,
the way the cadence that they have and the way that they go about like
right.
forming the rhythms
And the
of
phrasing
the rhymes
and how it's in relation to the beats and all that shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
or that's not really Dre's strong suit for sure.
Or it's like that's not the part of it that's unique.
Sure. Yeah.
You know? It's not that he does it bad.
No.
It's just that it's not, but
So another thing about this though is that this song is Keep Their Heads Ringing from the Friday soundtrack.
yeah.
So this is basically a stand-in for a lot of that soundtrack.
I got
I'm not gonna put the whole soundtrack on here. And the one song I really wanted to put on here from that soundtrack is not available on Spotify, so I didn't put it on here. Which is the Isley Brothers doing like trying to find a better way.
Okay.
I always forget which lyric it is, and that's the song that plays over the intro montage to the movie Friday. Side note: Friday is like one of my top 3 favorite movies of all time.
I haven't watched it in like 20 years.
My family used to quote this movie on a regular basis.
It's one of my mom's favorite movies.
Nice. It's so fucking good. It's like one of the most perfect movies. It's like up there with like Ghostbusters and shit. For me.
Okay.
So that's the song that plays over the opening credits, and like you see everybody like waking up and getting their shit done in the morning. Like Craig's asleep in his bed. Ice Cube's asleep in his bed. His sister's like asleep on her pillow, like trying not to fuck up her weave because she's got her like tracks in. And it's just playing the song, and the Isley Brothers is going off, and it's great.
Dude,
it's
Isley Brothers ain't nothing to fuck with. There is this random song. It's not even one of their big ones, but it's called "Make Me Say It Again." And this random song, and it's like they just had a vibe they were riffing on. And then there's like "Make Me Say It Again, Girl," and then "Make Me Say It Again, Girl," like part 2 or some shit like that. Okay, and there's this hi-hat thing that comes in part 2. It's pure fucking magic. It is. I don't even know how to describe it, but find that track, listen to that, and
All right.
it's just some of the most beautifully perfect human, imperfect drumming ever. It's just magic. I don't know how to say it. It's there's fucking magic in the way that the drums are played on that track. It's fucking special to me. But yeah, fucking Isley Brothers, man. You can't go wrong with the Isley Brothers.
Totally.
So yeah, Bjork. So
Yeah.
Bjork, I started, I don't know why. I've never intentionally listened to Bjork until today.
Nice.
And I just don't think I was ever exposed for whatever reason.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, because man, like it just doesn't make sense.
It was MTV. It was for me.
Really?
Again, like I said, so this was one of the videos that I saw on like Beavis and Butthead.
Okay.
They were watching the video for Human Behavior. And this is one that like I think for years me and my sister would like make references to this video because we saw this on there. And it's this weird thing where like she's in a cabin in the woods and she becomes a moth at the end, and it's this bizarre like claymation sort of video. But it's this song. This song's amazing.
Yeah.
But you would also see during that time, you would see like It's Oh So Quiet was a big video of hers on MTV.
Okay.
Other stuff too. So MTV is basically how I got.
That's
Because she didn't get radio play as far as I know.
right. And that's great. You know, like she was just one of those artists that was just sort of in the ether that everyone spoke highly of.
Right.
But that I didn't have access to her music, and I never felt so interested that I decided to spend $16 on a CD.
Sure. Yeah.
That was, you know what I mean? And so here we are. You got to 2021, and I'm like, well, let's go see what the rest of this Bjork is about.
Well, luckily, it's all still there for you to listen to.
Wonderful.
So,
Cranberries, they're amazing.
yep. There's nothing to say about that. I put Ode to My Family because I love that song, and it isn't zombie, basically. It's like kind of the other one I would put on there.
Me and my wife, we recently watched that show on Netflix, The Dairy Girls, which it takes place in Ireland during like the conflict or whatever. And the Cranberries are all through the soundtrack because it takes place during the early 90s or whatever.
Okay, cool.
And man, fucking Cranberries hold up real well.
Totally, like way more than you would expect.
Yeah.
There was some not too terribly long ago, like 5 or 10 years or whatever. There was some big music publication or something that gave like their 100 best songs of all time, and Zombie was like number one, because you can kind of see that song is killer, man.
It really is.
Like, I may as well sub that in for this, like either one of those, really.
Sure.
Because that's such a, like, the production on that song
yeah.
is just killer, and the lyrics on the song,
Yeah.
amazing.
I'm always attached. You know, I'll always have a special place for Dreams because that's what's on the Woodstock 94.
Right.
You know?
True.
So, so this Maisie Star track.
Mazzy Star, I think.
Mazzy Star, my bad.
I'm going to say.
My,
I didn't ask.
Mazzy bad. My bad. My Mazzy bad. So, what hit me about this one, I don't remember hearing this one.
This is Fade Into You is the name of the track.
Thank you.
And this was all over the radio at the time.
Okay. I forgot about this vibe. This is a very specific,
It really is.
like 90s proto indie rock chill vibe.
It really, really is.
And I forgot about like that vibe was on all sorts of tracks all over the place. And I totally forgot about it.
Yeah. I mean, this song, this is probably like the example of that. This is probably where a lot of that maybe even came from. This was like 93 or 92, I forget.
Okay.
It was kind of early. I feel like this showed up on a lot of movie soundtracks also. It was probably on like the Singles soundtrack or, you know, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, this is very much that early 90s, just chill, kind of not giving a fuck, but kind of depressed, but kind of like happy about it also.
Yeah,
really dreamy.
Yeah. There is that's a good way. That's a good way to describe it. So onto like your Nirvana, so I wanted to mention something about Negative Creep.
Okay.
Because Dave Grohl doesn't play on that record, first of all.
I don't remember who it is. Do you?
I don't know who it is either.
Okay.
But it's very confusing because like the guy in the photo has like hair over his face, and you're like,
Right.
I guess that's Dave
Dave
Grohl.
Yeah, I assume so.
But there's double bass in that song.
Yeah, there was, wasn't there?
Yeah. And
I
so
don't think it hit me, but yeah.
what that means is that my first two real exposures to double bass were probably Poison My Eyes by Anthrax on the Last Action Hero soundtrack, and Nirvana, Negative Creep.
Classic example.
Classic example of, double bass used effectively. So I just needed to throw that out there.
Nice.
And so I think it's interesting that we both, because this is sort of setting up where things are going to go in the next episode or two. And there's this guy who does this, he has a show or a YouTube channel called the Punk Rock MBA. His name's Finn McGinty.
MBA or NBA? Okay.
MBA. Like,
Gotcha.
I went and got my degree.
Like a business degree.
In punk rock.
Got it. Okay. Good.
And so he does these incredible videos where he sort of like analyzes the culture and these things going on around certain genres or certain bands or certain practices or whatever. And I happened to catch one of his where he talks about nu metal. And if I remember it, this is the way that he said it, was that nu metal took off because there was this demographic of kids that no one was speaking to. And these were kids who were too emo for metal. So we liked Metallica, but we had too many feelings for that to really do it for us.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
We were too angry for grunge. So we really liked Nirvana, but we wanted them to be heavier. So I think it's interesting because we both picked Breed, which is like their heaviest track on Nevermind.
Right.
And then we weren't urban enough to be really into hip hop.
Yeah.
We lived in the suburbs or we lived out in the country. We lived in the more rural areas or whatever, And so that created like this demographic that no one else was talking to. And so then whenever you have a Korn, you have those bands that are heavy, like Metallica, but emotional and vulnerable, like Nirvana, you know, and it's like, this is our shit, you know. That's sort of what set the stage for that. But that's what sort of it was interesting to me because we both picked like, give me the heaviest Nirvana track you got.
Yeah, it's like the heaviest, fastest track on Nevermind.
Right.
If not their entire catalog almost.
Right.
I don't know, that song, like all their hits off that album are fantastic, obviously.
There's not a bad note on that record.
Yeah, totally. But that song, Breed, specifically holds up in a way that I always kind of never expect. It's just like a good, solid song. Like, I guess I don't think of it because it wasn't a single.
Right.
So I guess I don't think of it in terms of it. Like when I think of anything else that they did, Lithium or
Drain You.
Or Drain. Anything else that had like a video along it. Yeah, and Bloom was a good example. I was thinking of the video and I was thinking of the vibe of that.
Yeah.
It was really strong in my mind. Whereas Breed was just, here's a fucking punk rock song, almost.
Right. And that's a thing that's, I think, really easy to forget is how much punk rock or how much grunge was sort of punk rock that sort of got filtered through the arena, a little bit of the arena rock aesthetics and sort of instrumentation and sort of whatnot. You know what I mean? Because like Mother Love Bone was like almost a hair rock band, a hair metal band. You know what I mean? That became Pearl Jam and whatnot.
Yeah. A lot of big hooks in grunge.
Right. And like they weren't just trying to make noise like early American hardcore punk. Like I'm gonna turn this amp and I'm gonna hit these chords until these chords sound like how I feel, and how I feel is you know, like there was still a commitment to the instrument in a sense, you know.
Yeah.
All right, Primus. So I thought it was really cool that you picked something from Tales from the Punch Bowl because I almost put Wynona's Big Brown Beaver on here because that album was mine. That was my Primus album. That
Your
was
gateway to Primus.
Well, my
or
gateway.
That was the only one.
I got, you know, it was Blue Collar Tweakers on Woodstock '94, but you know they didn't have Sailing the Seas of Cheese or whatever record that's on at Walmart.
That's what
they had Pork Soda, and they had Tales from the Punch Bowl. So those are the ones I got, and I could never really get into Pork Soda for whatever reason, but I got really really into Tales from the Punch Bowl because I was 11 and it was Beaver, and I knew all those lyrics. I still know all those lyrics.
Yep. Same.
But all the other tracks on, like, I really got into all the other tracks, like Mrs. Nut Butter and all that, and Southbound Pachyderm and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I remember seeing Les Claypool's solo band play at House of Blues in like the mid 2000s.
Is it the Frog Brigade?
It was after that.
It was after that? Okay.
It was after that. And so this was whenever Primus was on like a really extended hiatus or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we were at the House of Blues in Houston, which has a balcony. And we're up there for whatever reason. And the people sitting to us, it was whenever that volcano went off in Iceland or whatever. So like 2009 or 2010, somewhere in the late 2000s.
I feel like that's happened a couple times, but I honestly can't remember exactly.
But like all air travel was shut down.
Okay.
And so
okay.
And so there were these people. I think they're from Germany or something like that. And so they were there, and because they were like, well, we need something to do, and so we'll go to this. This is down the street from our hotel. We'll go see a show. So they weren't like Les Claypool fans.
They were there to see like an American show.
Yeah, we'll go see what the Americans do. And so the instrumentation was really amazing and weird because it was Les Claypool, and then it was a guy playing a cello through a guitar amp, and then it was a percussionist with a vibraphone and marimba, and then a drummer with a bunch of other weird shit. And it was just 4-piece. And so they play their set, and their set's amazing, and it's great, and it's weird. Some girl gets on stage and is drunk and knocks amps over, and it was a whole thing. And then for like the encore, one of the encores, they start playing Southbound Pachyderm,
Nice.
which is a great song, right? Fuck yeah, you should be excited to hear Southbound Pachyderm at any time, no matter what. It's a great song. But there was a dude in the balcony. He ran. He ran from the top. He ran down to the rail and he grabbed both sides of the rail and he like squatted down. He started like throwing himself back and forth. And it was just like it was like one of the most aggressive displays I've ever seen any human ever do, ever.
To Primus.
For, like, not just Primus. For do do do
Right.
do do do, like for
like
Southbound Pachyderm.
This kind of like moody, like I don't know how to describe
Right,
the
and then
song.
like the tom roll, and then it like comes in. A mosh pit broke out.
What?
A mosh pit broke out for that song.
Like the slowest mosh pit imaginable.
And they were trying so hard because they were so excited to hear a Primus song. And these poor Europeans, I think they were German, sitting beside us, they got concerned. Is this a riot? What is this? And because I guess they hadn't seen a mosh pit before. But yeah, man. So
Wow.
people take their Primus very seriously.
They do, yeah.
And so I know Primus is another one of your like Mount Rushmore bands,
Yeah.
so to speak. So you had My Name is Mud, or no, you had some other track on your other playlist.
Pork Soda.
Pork Soda,
yeah.
right. So you'd already been exposed to them through your uncles.
Right. So that's kind of the thing. That's why I didn't have Pork Soda on here specifically, but also this album I really, really loved as well. But yeah, Pork Soda was my entrance to Primus.
I see.
And then this album, like you, I got just like way into it. And that's probably one of my favorite songs off of it, Southbound Pachyderm.
Yeah. So did you get like, so when you started seeing them on MTV, were you like, oh yeah, this is a badass band that my uncles are into or that I'm already into? Were you already sort of totally on board with Primus, or?
I think at that point I was still more like, I know that this is very cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't fully like,
This is my shit.
I hadn't like given myself over to it. I was like, this is fucking cool, and I know that it's cool, like intellectually. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily feel it all the way yet, but I know it's very cool.
That is how I felt about almost all Primus besides Tales from the Punch Bowl. That's how I still feel. Like, I know this is good, but it doesn't make me feel how I think I'm supposed to feel yet. So speaking of that,
Okay.
Soundgarden.
Soundgarden.
Because I don't think that there's a better band out there that I listen to less
Nice.
than Soundgarden.
Yeah. You just never really hit it with them.
They just don't grab me. I mean, I have the Super Unknown record. I like it. Spoon Man's great. My Wave is cool, but it has all these elements that it's like, this should be a recipe for Richard to love this band. The drumming is really, really amazing and tasty.
Yeah.
Chris Cornell was a drummer first, and so his riffs are really weird, and they have odd time. And
They're a very strange band in a lot of ways.
yeah, and but it never. I'm always like, this is good, but I never feel it.
Yeah, I mean stuff like Black Hole Sun, when that came around, was huge on MTV as well, and the radio
Right.
for that matter. And then a lot of stuff from Super Unknown. Fell on Black Days.
That's a great one.
What were the other singles off that album? Day I Tried to Live, which is the song I have on here. But then you would also hear occasionally on the radio, you hear like Outshined from the previous album.
Right.
Or Jesus Christ Pose.
Mm-hmm.
It's like stuff that was a little bit earlier and wilder in a way.
Right.
And then right around that time, I guess it was 96, that Down on the Upside came out, their next album.
Right.
And that had like all the big, it was less heavy and more like anthemic,
Mm-hmm.
like Pretty Noose and Burden in My Hand,
Right.
and all this stuff became huge singles, and to the point where I kind of got tired of them in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always able to come back to like Super Unknown specifically, and yeah, it's just a fantastic fucking album.
And it is, and I'm not trying to take anything away from
Sure.
it. It's a great album, but it might just be a weird thing where, like, I don't know, maybe I like it the exact amount I'm supposed to, but I always feel like I should like it more than I do, and I don't know why.
Yeah. Weirdly these days, or like as time has gone on specifically, but in the past, like, I don't know, 10 or so years, Chris Cornell has become hailed as this like once in a generation vocalist.
Mm.
And I didn't really see that coming, but looking back, I'm like, yeah, he's really fucking good.
It's unique.
Yeah.
My favorite Chris Cornell track is Like a Stone.
Okay. Yeah. Valid. Audioslave was a great album. They had a couple albums.
Yeah, I think they had 2.
I only had the first one.
So,
But my favorite Chris Cornell track is probably the theme song to Casino Royale, the James Bond movie,
oh, okay.
which is just an amazing song.
Well, there you go.
What's it called? You Know My Name.
Mm.
The best James Bond intro as well, by the way.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
Very specific like fandom going on there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's interesting. And it's sort of speaking to that. I remember hearing someone, this kind of will tie some random things together here, of like, so, because I have some Van Halen tracks on my list.
Yes.
I love Van Hagar. Unapologetically love Van Hagar. But I also think the first Van Halen record is one of the best records ever made. I never understood what all the fuss was about. I never really understood why people didn't like both, because I discovered both at the same time.
Okay.
And a big part of how I discovered Van Hagar was with that live record.
So that had parts of both.
Right. So
Right.
they had, there was, they also had Panama and You Really Got Me and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it was mostly Van Hagar stuff, but, and this is the thing is Sammy Hagar is amazing live. And so, but
I guess what's interesting about that is that so much of what Van Halen is Eddie Van Halen. And he didn't go anywhere.
right.
Like, he was still playing those songs in the
Right.
same exact way he always had.
Right. And what I understood later on was that a song like, because there's like songs like Pound Cake,
Yeah.
Which
It's a really strange song to me.
isn't it?
Is
Isn't it?
Is
It's
he like just talking about cake? I don't really know.
like, is that your old trip? Like, are we baking?
Just
Or are
wanna
we
use- you
talking about women?
yeah, you just want to use that old time recipe. I don't know. No.
But I love that song because it started off with Eddie playing a fucking drill on the guitar. That's
Right.
how he's making that effect at the beginning.
Right.
Which I thought was the coolest shit.
Channeling his inner jackal there. Yeah.
But I'm much later on, I realized why there was such polarization, why people got upset, was because there never would have been a song like How Do You Know When It's Love? David Lee Roth would have never sang a song
Absolutely
like that.
not, yeah. Or
And-
if he had, it would have been like the gigolo version of that,
Right, it would have been some sarcastic,
totally different vibe.
yeah,
It would not have been earnest at all. Or however earnest that was, I guess.
right, not at all. And so I remember hearing someone say something to the effect of that that Van Halen with Sammy Hagar was just a different band that kept the same name.
Yeah.
And it would be like if Audioslave was called Rage Against the Machine.
That's a good way to say that, yeah.
And sort of similar to what you said earlier about Allison Chains. Like
Yeah.
with William Duvall, you're like, that's just a different band.
Yeah.
And that's cool that they do Allison Chains songs. And I'm not mad about it, but that's a different thing.
Yeah.
And
I'm not even saying he does Lane Staley's parts poorly. I'm just saying that ain't Lane Staley.
sure.
Sure.
So
yeah, that's because I am someone who later on in life got into early Van Halen. So David Lee Roth Van Halen is that first album specifically, and like Diver Down were like
That's so first album
Just-
so
just
good.
Incredible fucking albums.
It's so unique and weird.
It really is. It came out in 1978. Like, think of all the other shit that was around then, and just nothing at all close.
It's like there's so much of it that's like a swing record.
Yeah.
It's like a big band, you know, there's a weird, it's such a weird record.
It's so bombastic in like
Yes.
every way possible.
In every single way. Yes.
So I am someone who got into that eventually and never liked Van Hagar. Couldn't really tell you why. It just never clicked with me.
Yeah. That
It was very much two different bands.
that record Balance that came out in 95 that I had that Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do, that track, that whole album is really fucking good.
Oh, that's the one that had Right Now on it, isn't it?
No, that was for Unlawful Carnage. For Unlawful Carnage.
For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge.
Yeah, which
right.
is the one right before. That was like 91 or 92.
That's right.
So the live record was the one touring in support of that one
Okay.
that I had. But yeah, like Balance was the one with like the twins on it on this, you know what I mean? Like you would have heard that song on the radio.
Yes,
on
definitely.
101 and whatnot. And that whole record is so it's weird, but so fucking good. And it's one of those that holds up really well because you go back and you listen to it and it's like, well, this is just those guys fucking playing. And shit, it's good. So
something I want to bring up real quick that isn't on any of the collections or anything. We've got Black Sabbath on your list.
yeah, so
NIB.
the reason that is there is there was this specific moment that happened where I sort of found my mom told me how into Black Sabbath my dad was, because this was sort of when I was getting into this stage of like I had bought a little book. It was about this. It was like the dimensions of a CD, and it would fit in like a CD slot on like a CD rack.
I had some books like that, actually, weirdly.
Yeah, like Metallica or whatever. And this
Yeah.
one was like like a history of heavy metal or whatever. And
Yeah.
so this became like homework for me. And I remember, I think I even might have asked my mom about the Black Sabbath or something, because it's like, well, it says it's really important in here.
I should probably know. I should be learning this in school, right?
Yeah, I should have learned this in school. And she was like, oh yeah, your dad loved Black Sabbath. That's one of his favorite bands. And so I bought a Black Sabbath Greatest Hits CD at the mall in Humble, and then we later went and ate at Luby's there in the mall, because I remember looking at the cover and looking at the songs and like, what are these songs called? What are they gonna sound like?
Right.
Like
Well,
I couldn't wait.
While you were like eating your buffet fish, or
Yeah.
Okay.
Chicken fried steak.
Okay.
But I remember that I have very specific memories of me and Jeremy putting on that Greatest Hits CD and just rocking out in my bedroom as like 7th graders,
Sweet.
just playing air guitar to Black Sabbath and NIB and War Pigs and Iron Man and Sweet Leaf and all of that stuff. And then later, a few years later, I would go really down the rabbit hole with the Ozzy era Sabbath, and I
Right.
absorbed that entire era. That I became obsessed. And so like, you know, still to this day, Sabotage and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath are some of my favorite records ever. And so they're gonna show up again. Because but this was sort of, I put in IB because this was sort of the first introduction, in a sense. So,
Gotcha.
but yeah, and so sort of along those lines, like that was sort of how I got into Slayer too. It was like, oh, well, it says they're important.
This was like a Godfathers of Metal book,
Something
sort of
like
thing?
that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like an A to Z, and so I eventually sort of went through all these, like, oh, well, they say Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, they say it's important, and I got the Iron Maiden record, and I was like, I don't like this. This is not for me. I don't get it. And
It takes a certain mindset to get into some Iron Maiden.
yeah, it does. And I'm still not there. I appreciate it, but I don't I don't love Maiden the way that people who love Maiden love Maiden.
Oh, I do that either. But I love me some Maiden, but I don't.
I think my favorite Maiden track is the outro of She Wolf. The Megadeth track off of Cryptic Writings. Is it She Wolf? Is that the one? Yeah.
Is it yes, it is. That's a fantastic Maiden track.
For years, I had that stuck in my head, and I was going through. I couldn't figure out what Iron Maiden song it was.
Oh, really?
I was so irritated.
I figured between Jeremy and I listening to that album a lot, you would have.
No, this happened like 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
This was very recent,
Oh,
so
very good.
I was pretty removed from our Cryptic Writings experience.
Gotcha.
For it to click initially. So, but yeah, so Slayer, so I went to Media Play, and I would always buy live records because they had all the songs on it. That was my logic at the time.
Totally. That was like a big thing at the time. It's like you want to get the best bang for your buck. And I know all these songs.
Right. It's like, well, I could buy Seasons of the Abyss, Rain and Blood, and South of Heaven. Oh man, but I only have like, I could get Decade of Aggression here, and I could get all of it.
Whether or not they're the versions that you know and expect, that's one story. But like, also on these studio albums, I don't know all these songs. So maybe I'm getting shit songs.
I didn't know any of the songs, so I didn't have any expectations.
Also that.
So my first exposure to Slayer was that live record, so that's why I put that song Antichrist on here. And I remember going back and talking to my friends at junior and being like, yeah, no, Slayer's pretty good. They're like White Zombie, but faster. Because that was...
You're not wrong.
That was my read. That was how I interpret, like, with my experience at the time as an 11 or 12-year-old. That was like the filter I was seeing Slayer through. It was like, well, like he sings fast. So it's like White Zombie.
Although to be fair, this the White Zombie track you have on here is one of their faster ones.
That is true.
Supercharger Heaven
is
a hell of a song.
I remember writing out all the lyrics like on my notebook in like 7th grade.
Nice.
I probably still know all of those lyrics.
I borrowed, when I first got a CD player, I didn't buy this album for a while, but I borrowed it from one of my uncles. And so I spent a while, if you remember that insert, it was like wild art and all the lyrics in like different art treatments. Cool as hell, but I remember like poring over that insert and all the lyrics and stuff constantly.
That experience of going through a White Zombie record is a thing that I will always feel obligated to try to recreate with everything I release. It's like, if only it could be like a White Zombie record, and it can't. Nothing can.
No, it can't.
Nothing can. So, another interesting live video that came across was the Monsters of Rock.
Yeah.
So, because I think I'd already had Cowboys from Hell, I think I'd already been exposed to Pantera for whatever reason. But when I saw the live footage of them playing at Monsters of Rock, the one they did in Russia or whatever. And it was
like in a field in Russia, like in the Russia countryside, and there were just like 1 million people.
It was insane. The footage is absolutely insane.
They pan out to the crowds, and like the crowd goes back far, but you can't really tell just how far. But you see these towers poking up from the audience that are like, I don't know what they're for exactly. There's like steel structures.
It's probably more speakers.
Maybe, yeah. But it's just a sea of people.
Or sniper towers or something.
I mean, this was like right after the Soviet Union kind of opened up. Well, collapsed and then opened up.
Right, that was the whole purpose of the festival.
So, yeah, exactly.
And so you have Pantera, and this is them, and like they'd already done their entire touring cycle for Cowboys from Hell. They were in the middle of recording Vulgar, I'm pretty sure. And so live, they are just fucking on fire.
Yes.
And so when I saw that sort of changed everything. That was like, okay, well, that's how I want to play like that. You know what I mean? So that's why I put that live version of Domination. And then also Metallica is also on there. So then I got a better representation of what Metallica is about.
Was this before or after Woodstock?
This would have been before.
Okay.
So it would have been more and very much in their sort of Black Album touring phase.
Yeah.
So I think it would have been a year or two. Yeah, it would have had to have been 2 years because Vulgar came out in 92. So
Yeah.
And so, like Harvester of Sorrow, they're playing shit like that. And so that sort of really solidified, I think, a lot of my metal aesthetic. AC/DC is also on there. And so I got like into AC/DC, got an AC/DC live record, got into that. Black Crowes are also on there. They had to lighten up the bill a little bit.
Whoa, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And there's some weirdo Russian band too. It's
cool.
Very strange.
Very cool.
So yeah, just another one of those sort of dominoes of just physical media, some random VHS that I decided to buy or that my local video store had for me to rent, which completely changes my musical trajectory.
Right.
So weird. And let's see, who else do you got on here? You have Rage.
Yeah. I put 2 Rage songs on there. I put Know Your Enemy, and I put Vietnam. Those are from different albums, from the self-titled and from Evil Empire. And so I think that I'm trying to remember how I discovered. It must have just been like on the radio, probably, because they did play like Killing in the Name and stuff like that.
I remember Bulls on Parade.
Bulls on Parade was huge as well. But they did play stuff from the first album too. And I think they did play Know Your Enemy from time to time. And I also loved that one at the time because, for other reasons, it had Maynard on it. And I was like, that's really cool because Maynard's on there.
Sure.
But also, that's one of my favorite Rage songs. Like that riff, that's been one of my favorite guitar performances from Tom Morello.
That solo.
Incredible. That solo was just, at the time, like when I heard that as a kid, as a teenager, I couldn't comprehend how it was happening.
Right.
Not only how it was happening like sonically, like because he's using a whammy pedal, and so it goes up like 2 extra octaves, but also just like how is somebody playing that fast? It's so fast. The guy from Rage is playing that fast. That's so weird, right?
Right. That is he is maybe the best, one of the best soloists on guitar in the past to come out and in like that 20-year span from like 1990 to like 2010.
Could be. He's up there.
Because his solos were always so unique. They were all unique from each other.
Yeah.
And they were always memorable.
Yeah, well, what was cool about him is he could do all that stuff. He could do whatever he wanted, basically, but he chose to do interesting things.
Right.
And that's what always made it great.
Right.
Like, you're making the sound, it sounds like a fucking cow is in this solo. On the Battle of Los Angeles and whatever, mic check.
Yeah.
It's like you could have gone, but you went, and I like that.
Right. I feel like I didn't get into Rage until later when I got a hold of a VHS of theirs that was half their music videos and half live footage. And that sort of really solidified a lot of things for not just for me, but for us. Because these were things that like me and Jeremy and my other friends would watch, because later on, which we'll talk about in the next kind of episode we do like this, later on we're going to talk about, because the thing that happens later is, all right, well, we're definitely in a band. We're definitely musicians. Who do we want to be like?
Yeah.
And so then that becomes a totally different filter through which you're looking at things. And Rage, those live videos of Rage definitely were a huge influence in that portion. So I was completely ignorant of them during this era.
Gotcha.
I knew nothing about them.
So actually, interestingly, I said that most of this stuff came from like MTV and the radio, but actually specifically Evil Empire was an album that my dad bought and was way into.
Huh. Is it just me? I always feel like I've always felt this. The production on Evil Empire falls kind of flat to me compared to the production on the on the first one and on Battle of Los Angeles.
You compared to Battle of Los Angeles as well? Maybe. I always feel like the self-titled is very much like a DIY job. Like it feels very raw. And then sort of everything after that feels kind of polished.
Yeah.
It's definitely different.
It feels there's a power to the first one.
Yeah.
And there's a little thing that's missing from Evil Empire. And maybe it's just because the versions of those songs I heard were live versions first. So
sure. Maybe.
So after seeing a live version of Vietnam or Tire Me,
they just don't quite hit as hard on the album.
Don't.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
It might just be that.
No, I think Evil Empire doesn't quite hit as hard as the first album specifically.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I really liked the Battle of Los Angeles record, when it came out. But so Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm glad you picked something from this record because I almost put Aeroplane on it. But
Cool.
but I was like I'm gonna leave Blood Sugar Sex Magic because trying to cop that drum beat was an important part of my junior high experience. Because you have all those slick hi-hat open and closing.
Yeah.
Because he's doing there's one where he does it's a really great beat to learn to get that stuff down, because there's one he opens it before a snare hit, and there's another one where he opens it before a bass drum hit. And so there's a different, you got to get your body, like it. So yeah, I have very specific memory. There's not a lot of beats that I have like really specific memories of trying to learn, but that's one of them. And then also Cowboys from Hell is another one, because they're ba da, and that ba da. You have a kick drum that's in between your hi-hat notes.
Okay.
And so I remember sitting in Coach Wilson's history class, tapping that out, trying to get that just right.
Right.
So, and then it would take me 20 years to be able to play the rest of the song correctly. But
shit, I was gonna say something. Yes, instead of Warped from One Hot Minute, I almost put Deep Kick from One Hot Minute. Do you know that song? Are you familiar with that album very much?
no,
Not so much.
it was like, okay, well, you like me and Chris Cotter was like, you buy One Hot Minute and I'll buy Blood Sugar Sex Magic.
Okay.
And it was like a coin toss. And
man.
he had that one. And I'm not very familiar with that record.
Oh man, like Blood Sugar Sex Magic is like a classic. So you probably won, or you probably won on that deal.
Oh, I definitely did.
Warped has some, One Hot Minute has some great stuff on it though. For example, Warped. For example, My Friends. For example,
Yeah.
Airplane. Great songs. Anyway, Deep Kick is the song about, like, it opens up with spoken word for like a minute, and it's Anthony Kiedis is like saying how shit was weird when he was a kid, and shit was kind of strange, and they had to like do a lot of weird stuff, and then it comes in with this like boom, 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 and it just goes into the song, and it's just a bizarre set of lyrics about like I always imagined it was him and Flea. It's like him and his friend, but I always imagined it was him and Flea.
Oh, okay.
Doing this weird shit like sneaking into hospitals and breaking into places and being weird, like tagging shit. And then the end is it slows way back down. And it's like a sort of a ballad, and it's Flea singing this time, and his terrible like singing voice, and it's great. Anyway, I almost put that on here because that's such a weird song, but that song always grabbed me from that album as being just like, this is really strange, but it's you just don't hear songs like that very often, I guess.
Sure.
But Warped is such a great, like, Chili Peppers rarely do just like straight ahead rock songs like that. That's kind of what that is.
I see what you're saying.
But it's just a really great song.
Yeah, they're kind of an iceberg of a band in a way, that there's all these ways that you could only, there's multiple ways you could only get the surface of what they're about, and so because you could just listen to the things that they did pre Blood Sugar Sex Magic and be like, oh man, well, what a fucking crazy, weird, incredible funk rock band.
Right.
And then, or you could just listen to Blood Sugar Sex Magic, or you could just but there's always this weird movement and always this weird, they're very unique and very prolific, and like there's never been a time when they were getting a lot of radio airplay that there was anyone else on the radio that sounded anything like them.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe in the early 90s, like, because there was like if you listen to the Encino Man soundtrack, there's like Infectious Grooves and things like that. And so there's a little bit of that whole funk rock thing that like bubbled up, but that was very brief. And none of those other bands survived. There's no other bands are getting away with like slap bass in a radio song,
right?
In
like,
a radio hit.
There was nothing on the radio at all that sounded like that. I always associated Chili Peppers closely with Primus. I think for the bass weirdness reasons, I guess.
Oddly, I did not.
And just that they're weird bands in their own right.
Right.
So yeah, nothing deeper than that.
The other thing that's really, like from a drummer perspective, is Chad Smith is a really amazing. He's not just an amazing drummer, but he's an amazing sort of representative of the history and the tradition of drumming, because he, number one, he's the exact right drummer for those songs. And it doesn't matter what song it is. It doesn't matter if it's some crazy bombastic thing off of Blood Sugar Sex Magic or Mother's Milk or One Hot Minute, or if it's Californication or a weirdo song from By the Way or whatever. He always finds a way to do the perfect musical thing for it.
Right.
But he's also he's such a good, he talks about Hendrix. He talks about learning, like that Mitch Mitchell and those early guys were huge influences on him, and Deep Purple and all that sort of stuff. And then all the funk stuff. Like he sits in a really unique node between like the deep history of rock music and rock drumming and truly loving it and representing it, and also of funk drumming. And there's just not a lot of guys that play in the biggest band on the planet that are also really great sort of
like students of music
like
in a way.
Right, like really great representatives of the tradition of their instrument as well. And I remember, so he did a thing on a Modern Drummer Fest. I think it was 2005. And so he did like a duo performance with Ian Paice from Deep Purple.
Mm-hmm.
And so now this is a Modern Drummer Festival, okay? Like this is Chop City for a lot of these things. And what he did for one of his segments was he sat down and he played just a basic 16th note groove for like 5 minutes straight.
Wow.
So you're playing in front of like 2,000 drummers. And these are drummers. Okay, these are guys that, like these are all jazz guys. Like they know all the licks, they know all the things, right? And he sits down and just plays pocket for like 5, just just makes them eat it for 5 minutes. Just to like make the point of like this is 90% of what I do. And if you can do all this acrobatics and, whipping your arms around, it's like, that's cool. But that's not really what this life is about.
Right.
And I remember getting into arguments with drummer friends of mine because they were like, anyone could do that, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, but, because it made an impact. It really did. It really sort of changed how I thought about things.
It just underlines the importance of that sort of thing in a weird way.
Right, yeah. And I probably I probably took a weird interpretation of it and like perverted it and made it stupid because I was like 20. I was like 22 and like made it to where like, see, if anyone does any kind of technical stuff, then they're not playing music.
You gotta go back to the roots, man.
Yeah, you gotta go if you have more than 2 toms, you're trying too hard. I think that was around the time period that I scaled my kit way back and all that. So
Gotcha.
there's really only just a few more that of your list that I really wanted to kind of point something out about, and then there's one more thing on mine that I want to say. So I'm so glad you picked that Sponge song.
Oh yeah,
because that's always been one of my favorite songs ever, and I've forgotten about it.
Nice.
Like I heard the opening guitar thing, and I was like,
Plowed.
and it's
Nice
I
Sponge.
I feel like that song, like the existence of that band Sponge, the existence of that record, is the kindest thing that Stone Temple Pilots has ever done for me, personally.
Okay.
Because the only reason that band Sponge was getting money thrown at them was because of Stone Temple Pilots and the success Stone Temple Pilots had had.
You're probably right.
And I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I'm really glad that song made it into my life. But it would not have made it into my life had it not been for STP. And that's okay.
That's fair. Weirdly, this was the second Sponge album that I got into. The first one was Wax to Static, which was their next album after this, which was not as good, though. And Sponge albums also aren't really the thing you're there for. You're there for a few really good songs. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that Sponge is like an incredible band, but that song, like you say, and this album also had 16 Candles Down the Drain.
Okay.
Molly is what it's called. But yeah, this is such a good song. Just a good song.
Yep. It's great.
That's it.
Yep. I remember, so I want to talk about Great Southern Trendkill and Load for a second.
Okay.
Because those albums came out around the same time, like May and June 1996 respectively. And they're the first albums that I remember going and buying the day they came out. And so I remember buying Southern Trendkill the day it came out. I remember bringing it back. I remember opening it and seeing the case and seeing the snake skeleton thing. And I remember putting it, me and Chris Connor, pretty sure, put it in my CD player and we pushed play. And then it was like the old stereo commercials where like your hair
The Maxell person in the chair.
Yes.
Yeah.
The way that record starts.
Yep.
I feel like that's another. If you had to tell the tale of my musical experience in my life in 10 moments, that would be one of them. Of just, well, let's see what this new Pantera record is about. Yeah. And so it was completely, just blew my mind, obviously. And we talked a lot about that record last episode. But yeah, I love that record. And
yeah, I will have more to say about that record later because I didn't get into to that until later.
I see. I didn't have context for it until later, but I loved it, and then I remember like, which song on Load do you think, which of these songs do you think are going to be the big radio singles? Because it was like, there's going to be just as many big songs off of this as there was off the Black Album, right? I remember having this conversation with people.
Oh, man.
Of like, I think it's going to be Cure. I think that's going to be the next really big one.
Oh, dude, the shit that you think about.
Or Bleeding Me, whatever.
Bleeding Me's a good song.
No one thought it was going to be Ronnie. No one. Is Ronnie on Load or is that on Reload?
I think it might be Reload.
It might be. Oh, well. Yeah. And so the other thing though is I might, because in line with the conversation we had last time, because I sort of proposed Einema as being a possible art record.
Yes.
Which you shot me down. You said absolutely not.
Yes.
So I went back and I listened to Opiate, and then I was listening to like half of Undertow, and I was like, all right, this is cool, dude. Einema's on such another level. Like I like the first track, like Stinkfist came on. I was like, this is practically a different band. This is such a different, like, nothing, not to shit on the vibe that is Undertow and Opiate, because I got Einema like during this time period, like 96 or whatever. Well, no, not during the time period yet, but I got it, and I didn't get it. I had to go back and like start at the beginning and work my way up to it. Okay. But dude, this is Stinkfist. Dude, fuck you. Einema. Well, Einema is an art record.
Okay, so but to go back to that, my argument for why not is because yes, there is a very clear evolution from opiate to undertow and from undertow to anima and so on. But the so on is where I got hung up. I was like, that keeps going.
Okay.
To me, Lateralis is just as much of a weird jump from anima.
I feel like there's like a cha-chink, and then they're just sort of playing around in the same sandbox. Like I feel like Anima and Lateralis are just different sections of the same sandbox.
Yeah.
You know. Agree, disagree.
Yep. Stinkfist I saw when that video came out on MTV, which is how it was like a buzz clip and all that shit.
Right.
And so I saw the weird like sand person in the fucking creepy room with the TV and the smoke and taking himself apart. I was like, what is this?
Right.
So I went out and bought the album like very shortly after. I bought that album like we went to the mall with my mom and her boyfriend at the time, which is weird to think about. But I remember bringing that album home, and it had like the holographic cover on it.
Yeah,
so
like California, like dropping off.
Staring at that, and you could put, that's what it was. You could flip the insert all different ways and see it do something different. It was very, very cool.
Right, and the Bill Hicks quote
and
in
the
there.
Bill Hicks, I was like, who the fuck is Bill Hicks?
Right.
It's probably some guy. Maybe he's made up. I don't know. I'm like 12 or 14, I guess at the time.
Maybe he's made up.
Yeah, what the hell did I know at the time? And just like pouring over, the liner notes were so bizarre. It's just weird stuff in there.
Oh God,
man, what a weird album.
It's like, yeah, you have Bilbo Hicks.
Bilbo Hicks.
Just made up. Oh shit.
Anyway,
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember later on seeing the Bill Hicks Philosophy CD and buying it simply because he was mentioned in the Anima record.
Right.
That was sight unseen.
Yeah. Fair.
So, well, rad. Is there anything else you wanted to throw out there? That Sonic Youth track is great. I've never heard that before.
Dude, yeah, that's another. I guess that was everywhere. That was on the radio and MTV.
Maybe I did hear it and I just sort of forgot. So
I think the video version was actually like a live version. But that was the first Sonic Youth I'd heard. It's the Diamond Sea from Washing Machine. That's a great one. I'll shout out a couple, like the Screaming Trees are on here with Nearly Lost You, which is like that's one of the songs that you just like you probably heard a lot and you just kind of forgot about.
Right.
Because the Screaming Trees kind of never went anywhere.
Yeah.
Like Mark Lanigan, their singer,
that's what I was gonna ask.
He joined Queens of the Stone Age after a while.
That's right.
And he's a huge part of that band's like identity over time. But Nearly Lost You is a fantastic song.
Right. Yeah. And there are a few things I didn't talk about. So Ball Tongue.
Yeah.
That Korn song. So I remember this is one of my favorite memories. I was kind of sick, kind of playing hooky from school or whatever. And my mom, we went to the mall that night and I bought Les Exorcisto because I was already a Zombie fan, so I'm going for the deep cuts now.
Okay.
And I bought the first Korn record. And then we went and watched The Birdcage at the San Jacinto movie theater.
Hell yeah.
So, and then like I get home and like I remember that I was sick or feeling away because I had like a pallet or something in the living room and I had like my boombox there with me. And I remember putting on the Korn record and I remember, hearing Blind and I feel like I'd already heard it somehow, but I was like, oh, this is great. And then it got to Ball Tongue and I couldn't handle it.
It was just too much.
It scared me.
Was it like the...
And I had to... Because it doesn't just... That's not just the intro.
No, that's like many parts of that song.
And then...
Are this bizarre like scatting.
And it's so intense.
Yeah.
I had to turn it off. Like
Man.
Like that album kept staring at me like a horror movie for several days. And I had to like power through it. So
nice.
So yeah, that was. I think there's only like 2 albums that's ever happened to me with that and Meshuggah Chaos Fear a few years later.
Okay, fair.
So,
fair points on both counts.
Yeah, I heard that. I put that in the CD player and then I had to take it out. I was like, I'm not ready for this. I put it on the shelf and waited a year.
I'll be back later.
Yeah, I'll see you guys later.
I'm gonna get ready for this.
Yeah, I need to go prepare and start to cue the montage.
Yeah.
So so the Crow soundtrack, man, I wanted to talk about this a little bit because
Yeah.
there's so many cool fucking tracks on here. I just and this and like the Last Action Hero soundtrack, and then there was another one that you mentioned, I think. The way the music was used in the storytelling of the movie was just so incredible and so next level. Like the Cure song Burn, the way that it's used for his like transformation scene,
Yeah.
the way that Dead Souls is used when he's like jumping from rooftop to
Yeah.
rooftop. There's band scenes where you have like My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult and like a club scene. Same thing with Time Baby, the song that I put on there. And there's just all of these sort of things that it's just this incredible aesthetic and this really captivating, romantic, gothic, I guess, vibe.
Yeah, that's what they were going for. So, yeah.
And it's just absolutely intoxicating. And I think that, yeah, that left a huge impact on me. And you just look at who's on this. It's Stone Temple Pilots, Nine Shell, Raising Machine, Violent Femmes,
Yeah.
Rollins Band, Helmet, Pantera.
Wait, man, that Violent Femme song is so good.
It's Color Me Once, Color Me Twice. Their performance on Woodstock 94 is amazing.
What song do they have on here? Dance
Kiss.
Motherfucker Dance and Kiss Off.
Yeah, Kiss Off.
Okay,
There it is.
yeah.
Yeah, look it up. It's so weird and so fucking cool.
Good.
But yeah, and I mean, and even in Last Action Hero, like that Queensryche song, that's
Right.
that's in a car chase scene,
Huh.
and it's so incredible how well it works in that scene. It's part of the score almost.
Weird. I've been meaning to watch this movie again recently.
Same.
Because I know that it holds up in a weird way.
Because it was like it was a satire. It was a really,
Yes.
really high level meta satire.
I saw this in the theater, like with my neighbor friend, like as soon as it came out, and I just remember kind of not knowing what to think about it
It's weird.
because it was a meta movie, and I
Right.
didn't know what the hell that even meant.
Right. Like there's like clips of, whatever the Arnold's character's name is, Jack something, and Jack Slater.
Okay, yeah,
I
sure.
think that's it. But they're like in a video store, and it's Sylvester Stallone is on the poster for Terminator 2.
Right.
It's shit like that. And then so he's a character in a movie that a kid from the real world gets dropped into. And then this character finds out that he's a character, and he's like, but I have these real feelings about my son really being dead.
Right.
That's so fucking nuts. and this was what? This was 93. This is a year after Terminator 2.
Yeah.
So this is like doing a self-referential meta movie whenever Arnold is at the absolute apex
Of his like Hollywood career.
Right. I think True Lies came out the following year. The best action movie ever made.
So fucking good.
Did you ever kill anyone? Yeah, but they were all bad.
I heard something fairly recently about Arnold after this movie came out. He didn't want to do anything else like it or any sort of overt comedies or anything like that because it affected the way he saw his career or something to that effect.
Interesting.
I don't know where I saw that at now, but
I'm a huge Arnold nerd, and I can't recall having heard something like that.
okay, maybe it was bullshit.
So,
then.
but I'm not saying it's not true. I'm
Right.
saying I haven't heard that, and I'm a dork, and I read his biography and all those kinds of things. I'm a total Arnold stan.
I defer to you.
So,
Yeah.
but it is weird, and it was like a total box office flop and all this stuff
Yeah.
because people didn't know what to make of it.
Right, exactly.
But how about and then also like a kind of interesting thing is you have Michael Kamen
with Buckethead.
Right. And then Michael Kamen would be the guy who later went on to do S&M with Metallica.
Yeah.
So
Symphony.
I think he might have done this version of Dream On too with Aerosmith.
Oh, interesting.
I think. I really don't know.
He did some composing for, I think, Pink Floyd on the Wall.
No shit.
As well. Yeah.
Huh.
I want to say that's what that was.
So yeah.
So one more I want to bring up real quick
Please.
and just get your read on it. What do you think about Hook by Blues Traveler?
Oh, dude, there's such a cool song.
Isn't it?
Isn't it? Such a cool song.
It's one of my favorite, like just a standalone song.
It's so good.
It's one of my favorites.
It's so good, man. Yeah.
It works on so many levels.
Blues Traveler
And they
is so
kill
good.
it.
That was the song. Like I might have even fucking written it down here. Like what a weird fucking band.
Yeah.
And not even just that they're a weird band, but how weird is it that they were popular?
Yeah, that's actually the real question there.
And
how did they get so big?
Yeah, and I guess that, I mean, maybe this is a little bit of rose-colored glass, maybe it's a little bit of nostalgia or whatever, but I really, rock radio in the mid-90s was really weird and
it totally
really eclectic.
It was, yeah.
And even in the metal scene, like even later on in like 99, like the Ozfest lineup for 99 is weird. Is weird. Black Sabbath, Rob Zombie, Deftones, Primus, Slayer, Godsmack, System of a Down, Fear Factory, Static X, Puya, Slipknot.
Oh yeah.
It's Head PE,
Pretty diverse, all things considered.
And the year before that, they had Tool and Limp Bizkit.
Right.
Is weird. And then this weird thing happened in the early to the mid 2000s where like metal became like just this one thing and everything started to get partitioned really neatly. And like if you were going to be a little bit indie rock, you had to be all indie rock and you had to be all over there. And, but you would hear Blues Traveler, like all of these things, you would hear them all in a row.
Right.
Like you would hear Offspring and then Blues Traveler and then Allison Chains and then Alanis Morissette and then the Cranberries and Red Hot Chili, all like that's all in a row.
Yeah. That was modern rock at
Right.
the time. Alternative modern rock.
Right. And it's fucking banana sandwiches.
Yeah. But yeah, this song, I can't overstate how fucking cool this song is. It works on so many levels. It's a metatextual song about being a good song.
Yes.
But at the same time, it is a very good song. And the lyrics reference like all the different ways you could think of to use the word hook. They kind of do that. Like
right.
Peter Pan, like the song hook, a physical hook. And then towards the end, you get this like virtuosic harmonica solo. And then this weird like, he's almost rapping at some point. Really?
Yeah. Suck it in, suck it in, suck it in.
Yeah, I know that whole part. It's so good. Yeah. And it's really just good.
There was a episode of Roseanne where they guested on Roseanne and John Goodman got up and played harmonica with John
Popper.
There it is.
Yeah.
I was like
the other John.
So that's like a random childhood.
Did he really play it? Do you know?
It looked like it.
I hope so.
But it wouldn't surprise me if he did because John Goodman's the shit.
Yeah.
So Garbage. I haven't
Queer.
talked about them. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that sort of in line with the, because I had the thought, like kind of in thinking about those first playlists that we did and thinking about like, all right, well, women artists and whatnot. And when was the first time that you really related to a song sung by a woman artist that wasn't about a guy?
Sure.
Almost like a sonic Bechdel test, if you will, right? And I think that for me, that would have been the band Garbage, because none of their songs were sort of like real breakup boy songs. You know what I mean?
Not overtly, at least.
Yeah, it was
For
subtle,
sure.
you know? And, but Only Happy When It Rains or Stupid Girl or like, and then, but I felt like this song really captured an aesthetic and a vibe and an ethos of that era, of certain slivers of that era that I had kind of forgotten about. queerest of the queer, strangest of the strange. And there was sort of a pride in being an outcast and a romanticizing of that this song sort of really encapsulated. I mean, I remember in high school, like we were called the freaks on the stage. It was and we used the term endearingly.
Right.
We embraced it. And so, but yeah, and then it was before, I don't know, it feels like a very romantic kind of lens of, a bunch of outcasts that just, we just don't really fit anywhere else, but we're going to find a way to fit together because of, we listen to weird music or we read weird books or we have weird thoughts or whatever. And
yeah.
And so that song captured that vibe.
Yeah.
For me. So that's why I wanted to throw it on there.
I agree with that.
So, there's really only one other track on here we haven't really talked about explicitly, and that's Selling the Drama by Live. So
okay.
I want to talk. I have a lot to say about this band, so I don't really want to. I think that's why I was avoiding it. But
sure.
I remember seeing their performance on the Woodstock '94 and being completely blown away and moved by it, moved by the song, moved by their performance of it, moved by the drumming of it, all of it. Bought the record at the Crosby Walmart.
Whew, nice.
I'm pretty sure. And I listened to it so much that my mom was like, you're going to wait. Like, she started to lie to me. Like, you're going to break that CD.
CD's going to blow up in its player if you just keep listening to it like that.
If you keep listening to that CD, you're going to make my electric bill go sky high or whatever. Whatever, it. But I remember I was so infatuated with that record.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to it start to finish a week or two ago, and it is still amazing.
Yeah.
Some of the things they did after that record, not so amazing.
Oh,
So that might be what we talk about in the next few weeks, because I kind of want to. Because, man, I really, really love that band. And what a confusing career and discography they have.
I never delved that deeply into it. Somewhat deeply here. So,
Yes.
yeah. Okay.
I have a lot of. It's almost a trauma I need to work through that you're going to get to be a proxy for. So,
good.
So yeah.
Cool.
You got anything else?
I think we pretty much hit most of it there. So,
all right. Awesome. Well, see you next time.
peace.
One of these days we'll get good at ending shows.
No, we won't.
We won't. Maybe.
No.
Maybe we'll get good at starting them. Maybe we'll get good at ending them.
Okay, maybe.
When we figure that out, we'll probably get tired of the whole fucking thing, the whole fucking project. We'll be like, we've talked enough. We're done.
We'll get good at starting them, if only for the fact that we can prepare for that.
Oh, yeah.
Shit.
This is not untrue. We'll see.
Anyway. Good Lord.
And I don't know if I'm just like really in my head or if it like, I don't know, or if it's because we like the first two, we like were 2 weeks apart. And so it felt really fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And this one we're like 6 days from the last one. So it's like, I don't have anything to say.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or if it's just like a weird sliver of music. So I don't know.
That's probably what it is for me. Like, I just don't have a whole lot specifically deep to say about a lot of this stuff. It's just like, here's what I was into at the time.
Here's what we're into.
And
Here's what it did.
and it affected my taste going forward, but I don't have a lot to say that's like
I don't have anything
terribly introspective about it.
Yeah.
I think that's fine though.
It's all process, man.
Yeah.
It's sort of how I'm looking at it, you know.
I mean, there were like 4 or 5 on my list we didn't even touch on. And I'm like, you know what? I'm good with that.
Yeah,
For
I guess
this
we
point.
didn't. Yeah, I mean, because like, how can we touch on unless we like make a very specific point?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we didn't talk about like the Eels,
Right?
yeah, or Radiohead.
Yeah.
I see, or Toadies.
Yeah. Some of that stuff I can just probably bring up later. Toadies, I'll probably bring up later.
You know, Toadies are what?
I'll probably bring it up later.
Yeah. I don't have a lot to say about Toadies except for like, oh yeah, I always liked them when I heard them.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how good of a band they were until I had to learn one of their songs for a cover band. And I was like, God damn, this shit's weird.